The sky is pale and powdery as you open your eyes in the middle of the Egyptian Old Kingdom. There's no alarm clock, only the sound of a goat with a persistent cough and a neighbor grinding barley next door. You're lying on a woven mat stuffed with palm fibers. The air's still cool before the sun decides it's time to cook the entire Nile Valley like a well-oiled frying pan. Welcome to Giza, about 4,500 years ago. It smells faintly of sweet acacia, sweat, and crushed limestone dust that never quite leave your sandals. You stretch, you blink, you listen to a passing cart creak under the weight of something mysterious and probably fish-related. And here's a gentle warning. You probably won't make it through this day. Before we begin, feel free to gently press that subscribe button, like setting down a brick on a pyramid, slow and steady, and leave a comment telling us your location and the local time. We'd love to know where in time and space you're drifting off from. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You step outside your modest house, sun-baked mud brick, with a roof that doubles as a place to store drying onions. The morning is golden. The Nile is stretching lazily like a cat, and across the river, the Giza Plateau looms. There, framed in a dreamy haze, is the half-finished pyramid of Khufu. It's not even close to being done yet. It looks more like a very ambitious wedding cake that's lost momentum. You've been hired as a water carrier for the stone haulers today. Not glamorous, but essential. Think of yourself as the fuel pump of the operation, except you carry the fuel in clay jugs balanced on your shoulders, and no one tips you. The work site is a controlled chaos of shouting overseers, grunting laborers, bleeding animals, and someone who keeps trying to play a flute, but is consistently terrible. You walk carefully between sledges dragging blocks of limestone the size of garden sheds. Everything smells faintly of crushed rock, hot rope, and ambition. One historical fact worth mentioning: Khufu's pyramid, when finished, will stand about 481 feet tall, making it the tallest human-made structure for nearly 4,000 years. Which is impressive, given no one here has discovered the wheel for practical construction use yet. It's all sleds, sweat, and ingenious levers. Oh, and teamwork. A lot of shouting, sunburned teamwork. Your task is to keep the stone haulers hydrated. You do this by collecting water from a shaded clay cistern, carried in by the Nile's generous mood swings. Every jug weighs more than your dreams, but there's pride in this, because someone has to keep the operation moving, and because the foreman has a long stick and very little patience. You pass a group of workers laying logs under a massive sledge. They're chanting in rhythm, a trick to keep movement steady. It's hypnotic. Dust clings to their oiled skin, and the sun begins its slow climb over the limestone plateau. Your eyes catch something curious: an old man carving a fish into the side of a wall. You ask him why. He shrugs and says, "For the gods, or maybe for fun." Historians still debate whether many of these carvings were spiritual offerings or just ancient doodles with excellent marketing. A small break is called. Everyone flops down in patches of shade, like wilted herbs. You sit near a boy chewing on dried dates and bread. He offers you one. It tastes like sweet gravel. You pretend to enjoy it, nodding in exaggerated gratitude. Fun cultural tidbit: workers here are sometimes paid in beer, not fancy beer. Think ancient barley porridge left in the sun with a hint of fermentation and optimism. Still, it does the job. You take a sip and immediately regret it. It's warm. It's chunky. It's persistent. A breeze stirs the dust. The pyramid in the distance seems to sigh in response. Somewhere, someone drops a block and curses in a language that sounds like someone gargling a handful of sand. You smile. You adjust your shoulders, and you pick up your jug again. Later in the morning, you're redirected to help with the loading ramps. You're not sure what this means until you're ankle-deep in mud, sliding planks, and being shouted at by a man with a single eyebrow that stretches across his entire forehead. Welcome to the ramp crew. You learn quickly that one of the greatest mysteries in pyramid construction is right beneath your feet. These ramps, earthen or limestone or a bit of both, are the arteries feeding the growing monument. Without them, you might as well try stacking elephants with your bare hands. Scholars today still argue about the ramp systems: straight, spiral, zigzag, like the history version of arguing over which IKEA manual is correct, except the furniture weighs several tons. You press your foot into a soft, sloped path. Mud brick reinforced with crushed rock, smoothed with animal fat. It's slicker than it sounds. You nearly lose your footing but catch yourself, gracefully, like a startled flamingo. Teams of men pull ropes thick as tree limbs, dragging stone blocks up the slope. You're sent to grease the planks. Yes, with actual grease. Animal fat. Your job today. Ancient lube technician. And here's your historical fact. Recent studies suggest workers poured water or slick oils on the sand ahead of the sledges to reduce friction. An early form of engineering that screams, "We've got brains and blisters." You crouch to pour a heavy bowl of fat along the track. It oozes slowly, like honey with trust issues. You smear it with a brush made from reeds and string. It smells faintly of goat. Everything smells faintly of goat. Suddenly, the hauling crew begins their pull. A chorus of low grunts, then the rhythmic slap of bare feet on the ramp. You watch as the block inches upward, then hear the horrible sound of a sledge shifting wrong. The load slips a little. Everyone freezes. You do too, holding your breath like it might help. It doesn't, but the ropes hold. A collective sigh of relief. Someone nearby mutters something about a good omen. Someone else just mutters. You walk back toward the bottom of the ramp for more supplies. You pass a worker lying flat under a shade canopy, chewing on a lotus stem. You ask what he's doing. "Thinking," he replies. "About sand." "Of course." Near the supply cart, you spot a curious item. A long, flat board covered in tiny, scratched drawings. It looks like a to-do list or a diagram of something important. You ask the man guarding it what it is. He says, "Instructions for stacking clouds." Then winks. Turns out, ancient Egyptians sometimes used pictorial planning boards, but whether they were practical guides or ceremonial props, still up for debate. One of the oxen tied near the edge of the site begins mooing insistently. A young girl, probably no older than 12, calms it with a scratch behind the ears and a soft song. She's part of the animal care team, an unglamorous but vital role. Without the animals, none of this moves. You nod to her. She nods back. Mutual respect between two people who both smell vaguely like earth and effort. The sun climbs higher. You start to feel like a pastry left too long in a clay oven. Every step kicks up more dust, and your jug of water now feels like a molten stone pressing into your spine. Then lunch. It's not luxurious. Flatbread, onion, maybe a slice of salted fish if you're lucky. You sit in the partial shade of a leaning wall and watch the pyramid shimmer in the distance. It's still not done. It won't be done for years. But every brick, every step, every awkward grease job brings it closer. Obscure cultural tidbit. To mark progress, some crews etch their gang names into the stone blocks. Names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkor. It's graffiti meets team building, ancient style. You wonder what your crew would be called. The Overheated Hydration Division. Probably. You lie back. Your muscles hum with exhaustion. Somewhere a bird sings. Somewhere else, someone burps and blames the beer. You think about how strange and miraculous it is that this place, this moment, will someday be studied in climate-controlled museums. That someone in the far future, maybe right now, is dreaming of pyramids to the sound of your muddy footsteps. You close your eyes for a moment. Just one moment. You're startled awake, not by a shout, nor the clatter of tools, but by a fly that has decided your nostril is prime real estate. You sweat gently, groggily, and return to the land of the living. If living means continuing to ferry slick buckets of animal grease across sun-drenched gravel while pretending your sandals aren't slowly evaporating. The afternoon in Giza arrives with all the subtlety of a falling obelisk. The sun is a molten disk high above, and your shadow has shrunk to the size of a coin. Every surface, stone, wood, skin, is hot enough to fry an ibis egg. If the Nile weren't shimmering off in the distance like a desert mirage, you might question whether water ever existed at all. Your next assignment is with the surveyors, a strange bunch. They wear less dust than everyone else and carry tools that make them look vaguely like magicians. Ropes knotted at suspiciously precise intervals, sighting tools made of polished copper, and plumb bobs dangling like pendulums of ancient authority. You are handed a stick. Not just any stick, of course. A measuring rod, they say, roughly a cubit in length. You are now part of the elite club of measurers, responsible for marking out the correct angles and placements for the next layer of stones. You don't quite understand how or why, but you nod solemnly. Everyone pretends to understand something at some point, and today it's your turn. And here's your major historical fact of the day. The Great Pyramid is aligned to the cardinal points with uncanny precision, off by just a fraction of a degree. This alignment, achieved without telescopes, GPS, or yelling at Google Maps, is still the subject of awe. Some argue it was done using the stars. Others say shadows. One brave soul suggested sheer luck. That scholar was gently ignored. As you walk alongside the survey team, placing rods and unspooling rope, you begin to notice how strangely mathematical the world here is. The workers chant in rhythmic counts. The stones are spaced with almost obsessive regularity. Even the ramps curve in graceful, deliberate arcs. Nothing is left to guesswork, except, apparently, your lunch break schedule. The foreman waves you down to assist with a plumb bob reading. You hold the string taut against a rising stone face. The copper bob swings slightly in the dry wind. A man in linen, probably a higher-up scribe, squints one eye and nods once. Your arm is now part of a very delicate geometry. You feel strangely proud, like a useful protractor. You ask the surveyor how long he's been doing this. He answers without looking up. Since Khufu had hair. You're unsure if he's joking. You smile anyway. Around the corner, an older worker is carefully chipping a groove into a block that already looks finished. He mutters to himself in old Egyptian, then looks up and explains that it's to help the next layer lock in more tightly. Like teeth, he says. Stone teeth. We're building the jaw of the gods. You pretend to understand. Again, obscure cultural tidbit. Some workers believed that each stone, once placed, carried a spirit or breath of the pyramid. That every block wasn't just material. It was memory, labor, and prayer condensed into limestone. So when you hear someone whisper to a stone before setting it down, it's not superstition. It's etiquette. You take a moment to admire the nearly invisible gaps between the blocks. No mortar, no adhesives, just weight and meticulous smoothing. It's said that not even a sheet of paper could slide between them, which, granted, is easier to believe when no one's invented paper yet. Suddenly, someone shouts. A crew has uncovered a snake nesting in a pile of unused rope. Chaos ensues. There is shrieking. There is flailing. One man throws a sandal with heroic, if utterly ineffective, force. Eventually, a clever young boy with a stick manages to chase the serpent away. The crowd cheers like they just watched a gladiator match, and the boy is offered an extra onion with dinner. Ancient hazard pay. You're waved over to help mix more of the ancient cement, though it's not cement as you know it. It's a blend of powdered gypsum, ash, and perhaps sand. The recipe changes slightly from day to day depending on who's mixing it, how hot it is, and who's in charge. This lack of uniformity is one reason why modern scholars still debate the full range of materials used in pyramid construction. Some say it was all limestone blocks. Others suspect that some parts, especially the internal blocks, might have been cast in place using early forms of concrete. You stir the mixture with a wooden paddle. It looks like porridge, smells like an old fireplace, and has the consistency of regret. Still, once dried, it will be strong enough to hold blocks together for millennia. You try not to inhale the dust, which coats your tongue like gritty flour. Nearby, a scribe records today's delivery count. He uses a palette of black and red ink, dipping his reed pen with delicate care. The papyrus flutters slightly in the breeze, but his hand is steady. You watch as he draws tiny symbols, eyes, birds, squiggly lines that might be snakes or poetry. This is one of the Empire's unsung powers, not brute strength, but bureaucracy. Every stone is counted, every worker tracked. It's less glamorous than divine architecture, but far more necessary. You ask the scribe how many stones have been laid so far. He sighs and says, thousands. You ask if he knows how many are left. He sighs again. Thousands more. In the distance, The sun begins its descent toward the hazy western sky. You can already see the shift in color. Everything slowly bathed in golden oranges and dusty pinks, as if the gods themselves are painting the end of the workday. You walk back toward the resting area. Your arms are sore. Your knees creak like old gates. A fellow worker pats your back and offers you a sip of today's beer ration. You thank him, take the sip, and instantly regret it again. One day, you tell yourself, you'll learn to politely decline. A pair of geese wander past, seemingly oblivious to the monumental endeavor rising just behind them. They honk at a cat. The cat pretends not to care. And somewhere in this dance of animals and ancient ambition, you feel a strange kind of peace. You look at the pyramid once more. Still unfinished. Still defiant. Still growing. And you, mud-caked, sunburned, mildly dehydrated. You are part of it. Just a speck. Just a soul. But without specks, there are no stars. Without your sweat, there is no story. Tomorrow, you'll be back. With another jug. Another grease job. Another day written invisibly into the stone. But for now, the wind has cooled. The work has paused. And the night begins to hum its ancient lullaby. You return home after sundown, bones aching in ways you didn't know bones could ache. Your tunic clings damp to your skin, saturated with the effort of keeping a dream alive, one block at a time. The sun has finally slipped beneath the horizon, leaving behind a sky painted with streaks of indigo and bronze. The village streets are calmer now. Even the goats have stopped yelling about whatever it is goats always seem to find infuriating. The air smells of charred barley and roasted onion, the kind of comforting scent that says, yes, you survived today. And for that, you've earned warm food and maybe a horizontal moment on your mat. You step into your modest dwelling, more of a cube than a house, made from sun-baked bricks with a low reed ceiling. There's a small oil lamp flickering in the corner, casting gentle, trembling shadows that dance across the wall like sleepy hieroglyphs. Your family is there. 2 siblings, a mother with calloused hands, a father who once worked the same pyramid before his knee started sounding like a rattle every time he crouched. They ask how your day was. You make a face that says everything and nothing. You sit. A bowl is placed in your hands. Stew, if you can call it that. A broth of lentils, herbs, and something that might once have been fish. You slurp it without questions. Questions are for the morning. Afterward, you lie back on the roof. It's one of the few places you can breathe, without walls pressing in. The stars blink into life above you, ancient and oblivious. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a goddess's scarf tossed too carelessly. You close your eyes for a moment, and the sounds of the day still echo. Ropes creaking, stones sliding, voices chanting in rhythm with the land. Morning comes quickly, too quickly. You wake with the stiffness of a person who clearly slept wrong on a mat designed more for tradition than comfort. After a quick wash with cold water from a clay jar and a few bites of flatbread dipped in sour milk, you're off again, back to the plateau, back to the behemoth of ambition rising stone by stone. Today, you're placed with the copper tool smiths. A shady area, thank the gods, at least until noon. You enter a tented workspace, blackened by smoke and layered with soot. The air buzzes with heat, and the metallic scent of hammered copper stings your nostrils. Tools clink and clang in a quiet, constant rhythm. Men squat low, sharpening chisels and reworking dull blades over embers. This is the underbelly of the operation, the heartbeat few see, fewer admire, but all depend on. Here's your major historical fact for the day. The entire pyramid was carved using copper tools, chisels, dolerite pounding stones, and wooden mallets. Iron was centuries away, and bronze too valuable to waste on limestone. These copper tools dulled quickly. A block might eat through 3 or 4 chisels in a single morning. You're handed a raw piece of copper and told to file it into a basic carving edge. You have no idea what you're doing, but your neighbor, a bearded man with soot-streaked cheeks and a surprisingly cheerful whistle, guides you with calm hands and fewer words. Together, you shape a chisel. You learn to respect copper. It yields but remembers. It softens with heat and hardens with the right cool down. You glance over and see a child fanning the fire, with a goose feather fan. You suspect the goose wasn't consulted. Obscure cultural tidbit. Egyptians believed copper had magical properties, especially in healing. Some even crushed it into powders to use in ointments. So technically, you're now both a toolmaker and a part-time ancient pharmacist. Congratulations. The Smiths tell stories as they work. One says he once carved a false doorway into a tomb so convincing, even the priests got lost. Another claims his chisel once struck stone so hard that it rang like a bell, and now his ear hums every full moon. You nod at the stories. They're dusty and oddly comforting. A man walks in, grumbling, and slams down a bent chisel. "She bit it," he says, rubbing his thumb. The others nod knowingly. By she, they mean the pyramid. She bites, she bruises, she breaks tools and bones, without discrimination. The pyramid is not merely a thing being built, it's an entity with moods. You leave the forge with a new appreciation for those who make the things that make the things. You smell like ash and hot copper, which, to be fair, is an upgrade from your usual aroma of grease and barley sweat. Next stop, the quarry line. You trek to the edge of the construction site, where the limestone blocks are freshly cut. You can hear the rhythmic thwack of dolerite pounding stones long before you arrive. It's a repetitive, hollow sound that makes your teeth itch. The men here swing heavy black stones with a rhythm so steady. It feels almost sacred. The foreman points at you. You, lift chips. You nod. Of course. Chips. You are now the ancient Egyptian version of a vacuum cleaner. Your task is to gather up shards of rock from around the base of the work zones, clear them into baskets, and drag them to the discard mound, affectionately known as the hill that keeps growing. Here's where you catch another strange detail. Among the rejected chips, you find a few pieces etched with unfinished carvings, symbols abandoned mid-curve. You ask an old worker about them. He squints at the piece in your hand and says, "Wrong god. New priest. Change the plan." Historians still debate just how much religious changes altered construction midway, but it's clear the priests didn't hesitate to revise divine blueprints. The sun is brutal, not dramatic, just relentless. It doesn't scream. It just is, like a large, disinterested supervisor watching everyone slowly melt. You take a brief pause near a shaded tool cache. A cat slinks by with the casual arrogance only cats and royalty can muster. She glances at you, as if to say you, again, still not finished, then vanishes behind a stack of unused ropes. As you gather your final basket of limestone flakes, a breeze sweeps through, lifting a thin cloud of dust. You watch it swirl in the air, dancing like a spirit unbound. It settles gently on the blocks waiting to ascend, as if even the wind wants to be part of this eternal monument. By the time you return to the main site, the pyramid casts a longer shadow. Its shape is more complete than it was yesterday. Still not finished, but closer. And just for a moment, just one, standing there sweaty, sore, and covered in rock dust, you feel like the ground beneath you is humming. A low, deep vibration that isn't sound but sense, like history is already echoing through your footsteps. You smile, not because it's easy, not because it's fun, but because it's yours. You're a builder of wonders, and wonders never rise quietly. You start the next day even before R.A. has wiped the sleep from his solar eyes. The sky is still that velvety deep blue that teeters on the edge of dawn, and the world hasn't quite decided if it wants to wake up. You, unfortunately, don't have the luxury of indecision. Your body aches like a temple gong, echoing the choices you made yesterday. Choices like lifting things you should have pushed, pushing things you should have left alone, and agreeing to work near the rope makers today. You arrive at the rope station, and almost immediately, the sharp tang of wet palm fiber hits you like a memory you never wanted. It's a mix of earthy rot, humidity, and something suspiciously like boiled sandals. Rows of people sit cross-legged, twisting, spinning, braiding. There's no music, just the soft rasp of fibers pulled tight, the occasional grunt of disapproval when a knot misbehaves, and the creak of wooden spindles. Today, your job is to prepare the raw fiber. That means soaking palm fronds in water and pounding them until they surrender. If you've never tried persuading a palm tree to become string, You should know. It's like asking a lion to be a pillow. They resist. With spikes. Historical fact of the day. The ancient Egyptians used rope in staggering quantities to haul, lift, anchor, and measure. Tens of thousands of meters were needed during pyramid construction, and it was all handmade. No machines, no shortcuts, just people like you, squatting in the dust, elbow deep in fibrous rebellion. Your instructor is a woman in her 60s, eyes sharp as obsidian, fingers gnarled from decades of pulling tension into shape. She watches you ruin your first bundle with quiet amusement. You are treating it like a snake, she says. It's not going to bite. Just listen. Listen to a palm. But you do. You listen to the rhythm of the pounding stones, to the scrape of blades shaving fiber into thread, to the wind humming against the tent cloth. Eventually, the palm fibers begin to cooperate, reluctantly. You twist them into rough cords, then join them into braids. It's slow work, meditative. You begin to forget your feet are asleep. An older man nearby tells you a tidbit between his own twists. Some ropes were even braided with symbolic knots. Knots meant to ward off misfortune or attract divine favor. He pulls out a coil and shows you one. A double loop around a carved bone bead. Luck, he says, or habit. Who knows the difference anymore? Historians still debate whether such ritual knots held real ceremonial weight or were simply worker superstitions layered on over generations. Either way, when you spend all day tying things, you start believing in patterns, and in days that repeat. Midday, the sun arrives with no fanfare, and all the grace of a camel stumbling into a fruit stand. Suddenly, it's hot enough to make your breath taste like clay. You wipe your face with the edge of your sleeve, and carry a finished coil to the lifting station. There, at the base of the pyramid's southern face, a new pulley-like contraption is being tested. Not a real pulley, mind you. Those are still centuries away. But clever variations with levers, sleds, and sliding weights are being tried, argued about, and occasionally abandoned mid-demonstration when a beam snaps in protest. You hand a rope over to a team setting up for what appears to be a precision hoist trial, which, translated into common terms, means we're going to try to move this 2-ton block and pray nothing breaks. One of the overseers, a middle-aged man with an elaborate feather tucked into his headband, clearly someone of importance, or at least flair, gestures for you to stay and observe. You do, partly because you're curious, partly because sitting down would be dangerous. You might not get up again. The rope team positions themselves. The rig involves a wooden frame, a sand-covered sled, and 4 men holding a guidance rope threaded through a carved groove in a stone channel. On command, they pull. The block lurches forward by about a finger's width. Everyone cheers. You cheer too, partly from solidarity, partly because no one got crushed. That's always worth celebrating. They pull again. Another inch. You ask one of the men what this setup is for. Corners, he says. The corners must be perfect. If they lean, the gods might lean with them. Obscure cultural tidbit. It was believed that pyramids were more than tombs. They were staircases for the soul, built so precisely that they could channel divine power straight into the afterlife. A single misaligned edge could metaphorically and spiritually cause a trip hazard on the way to eternity. Someone nearby drops a jar of tools. The clay shatters. Everyone pauses. No one breathes. Then the overseer sighs and waves it off. It's not an omen unless 3 break in a row. Someone jokes. Nervous laughter follows. No one jokes when 2 break. Later, you're reassigned to water hauling again. A familiar, back-breaking comfort. You balance jars on your shoulders, walk to the reservoir, scoop up muddy river water, and stagger back. Over, and over, and over. There's a rhythm to it now. Step, brace, lift, walk, sweat, sigh. You pass familiar faces. The old man from a fish carving is now drawing a bird into the stone. You wave. He nods. You see the rope maker with the sharp eyes, now repairing a frayed line with infinite care. You pass the cook's tent, where someone is roasting lentils and garlic, and for one brief moment, you feel joy. Then you trip over a goat. The goat is fine. You less so. You land hard, but the jar doesn't break. A win. Someone claps ironically. You bow theatrically. The moment becomes a running joke for the rest of the day. Watch your step, or you'll meet the goat. You deliver the water. You don't look back. As the sun dips low again, the pyramid glows with that impossibly warm light that turns even stone into something golden and alive. The topmost blocks are starting to taper inward now, giving the impression of form, shape, direction, like the builders are slowly coaxing a mountain into existence. Your shift ends with the ceremonial cleaning. Everyone washes up with water poured over their hands from shared jars, dries with cloth, and shares the last scraps of bread or gossip. You sit beside your usual spot, half shadow, half sun, and watch a group of young boys chase each other between carts, their laughter echoing off the stone like bird calls. Someone plays a flute, and this time, it's not awful. A girl sings a lullaby as she gathers tools. You lean your back against a still warm slab of limestone, eyes half lidded, breath slowing. The world doesn't stop, but it hushes. Just a little. And in that quiet, surrounded by dust, laughter, smoke, and the perfume of garlic and old sandals, you find something close to peace. Another day down. Another line added to a story that will outlast you by millennia. The pyramid doesn't speak. But if it did, you think it would whisper. Almost. And so, you close your eyes, not to escape, but to rest for what comes next. You wait before the call of birds, before the goats begin their daily grievances, and before even the sky has fully decided what color it wants to be. There's a faint silver mist hugging the ground. It's not common, mist this close to the desert. It feels like the Nile exhaled in the middle of the night and forgot to take it back. Today, you're not walking to the pyramid. Today, you're rowing. You've been assigned to the river crew. It's a break from the pyramid site, they say. Something lighter. Something different. You believe them, until you arrive at the riverbank and realize that rowing involves moving a barge that weighs about the same as a small temple, loaded to the edge with limestone blocks from Tura. The quarry at Tura, far across the Nile, produces the smooth white casing stones meant to give the pyramid its gleaming skin. These aren't the inner core blocks you've been hauling for weeks. These are finer, polished, sacred. These are the pyramid's face, the mask it wears for eternity. Your barge is docked loosely with thick rope, bobbing gently against the current like a very tired crocodile. Several workers are already aboard, adjusting the cargo, checking the water jugs, and inspecting the oars with a casual terror that suggests they may or may not snap under pressure. You step aboard, and the barge creaks dramatically beneath you, as if to say, "Really? Another one." Historical fact of the day. The ancient Egyptians were master rivermen. Their barges transported colossal stones from quarries as far as Aswan, some over 800 kilometers away. The Nile wasn't just a river. It was a highway, a vein, a lifeline. Everything moved by water because the land was too treacherous, too dry, too slow. The barge pushes off, guided by a simple sail and the rhythmic rowing of 6 men, with arms like rope and faces like leather scrolls. You're given a seat near the front, an oar, and a brief warning not to row like a scribe. You pretend to understand what that means, and try your best to look competent. The river opens before you, wide and drowsy. Papyrus stalks sway along the edges like curious onlookers. White ibises tiptoe through the reeds, stabbing at insects with surgical precision. The sun creeps over the horizon, and everything turns to gold. Water, sky, your skin. There's a rhythm to rowing, and you find it slowly. It helps that a man 2 seats behind you begins singing. It's not a song you know. It's a chant low, old, heavy with time. Everyone joins in. Even the birds seem to pause. You glance down and see your reflection in the water, distorted by ripples. You look older than you remember. Maybe it's the sun, or the dust, or the weight of stacking someone else's forever. Around mid-morning, the current begins to pull harder. The barge lurches slightly as a gust catches the sail, but the crew adjusts quickly. These men are used to this. You are not. Your oar smacks into a floating log, and your seatmate laughs so hard he nearly drops his own. "You row like a scribe," he says. So that's what it means. You pass a cluster of river dwellers, Fishermen pulling in nets heavy with silver glints. One waves. Another shouts something about stone fools and their boat of bricks. You smile. You wave. You consider shouting back, but the breeze steals your voice before you try. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some river barges, particularly those used to transport stone for royal projects, were decorated with protective symbols, eyes painted near the bow, or talismans carved into the wood to ensure safe passage. One of the rowers swears this very barge has a tiny falcon etched under the waterline. No one has seen it, but everyone insists it's there, especially during storms. Midday. The heat reflects off the water like polished bronze. The river is silent except for the oars dipping, lifting, dripping. Your muscles burn. Your throat is dry. But you don't stop. There's something sacred in the repetition, like you're not rowing a boat, but stirring the years forward. You arrive at the dock near Tura around the time the sun is directly overhead, brooding and unsympathetic. A team of stoneworkers and haulers is waiting. They unload your blocks with surprising speed. You watch them move with the silent precision of people who've done the same thing every day for decades. They barely speak. They barely look at you. One of them, an older man with a shock of white hair and a chest like a storage jar, places a hand on one of the blocks. He whispers something. A prayer? A blessing? A joke? You ask him. He shrugs. For the gods, he says. Or for the stone. Same thing, maybe. Historians still debate whether the casing stones were laid first or saved for last. Some evidence suggests a layered approach, each section completed top to bottom. Others argue they went on after the pyramid's core was mostly finished, like frosting a cake that's already settled. No one can agree. Maybe no one ever will. The return trip is heavier with silence. The barge is empty now. It floats higher, sways more. The oars slap water like tired hands on tired drums. You don't speak. You don't need to. As the sun begins its descent, casting long gold fingers across the Nile, you close your eyes briefly and let the warmth soak into your skin. The sail snaps gently above. A fly lands on your arm and considers staying. You twitch, and it moves on. You dock back at Giza under a sky bruised with purple and fire. The pyramid looms in the distance, slightly more finished than before. You can see scaffolding now, wooden frameworks like ribs climbing her sides. Workers still buzz across the stone like ants on a loaf of bread. You step off the barge with wobbly legs. The earth feels strange, too solid, too still. Someone offers you a cup of sweet beer. You don't even hesitate. It's warm, gritty, and tastes faintly like regret, but it's earned. As you walk back to your quarters, you pass a new carving on a public wall. It shows a barge, a pyramid, a single man with an oar. The man is smiling. You stop and stare. No one claims to have carved it. No one admits they know who it's meant to be. But it wasn't there this morning, and now it is. You smile, not because it's you, but because even the river remembers, and that somehow feels enough. The morning begins with your back reminding you that rowing is a young person's job. Every joint has become its own percussion instrument, clicking and cracking as you shift on your mat. Outside, dawn spills in slowly, as though unsure whether to commit. The village stirs. A rooster crows somewhere nearby, though he sounds more apologetic than triumphant. Even the birds seem tired today. Today, you're sent back to the pyramid base. The rest day you were promised? A myth. A dusty fable, like the one about the farmer who found gold under his fields and never had to work again. Funny story, he's still working, with more complaints. You're assigned to the team working on the inner chambers. That sounds glamorous, secretive, noble. You imagine winding tunnels and dark corridors lit by flickering torches, maybe a scroll or two clutched in your sweaty hand. Reality, as usual, is less theatrical. You follow your overseer, a short man with a long temper, through a narrow descending shaft freshly chiseled into the heart of the pyramid. It's dark, cooler at least. The air smells like limestone dust and old, stale sweat. Your footsteps echo, magnified by the walls like whispers in a tomb. You carry a basket of supplies, torches, chisels, and an extra reed mat for the scribe who insists he can't write unless his ankles are properly supported. The shaft continues downward until you're nearly doubled over. A gust of warm air from the world above tries to follow you in, then gives up halfway, as if even the wind finds this place claustrophobic. Today's task: assist the team carving out what will someday become the King's Chamber. You're not doing the carving. Your job is dust clearing and torch duty. You are now, officially, a human lantern stand. Still, you're here, in the pyramid, inside it, not hauling rocks under the sun, not pounding dolerite like a human hammer. You are part of the inner sanctum, a space designed for eternity, for a king's second birth. Historical fact of the day: the King's Chamber in Khufu's pyramid was built from massive blocks of red granite, hauled from Aswan, nearly 900 kilometers south. Each block weighs up to 80 tons. No one is entirely sure how they were transported or lifted into position with such precision. Ropes, ramps, maybe magic, or just relentless ingenuity that outlasts reason. You stand to the side as workers chip away at a partially leveled floor. Every strike sends a sharp echo down the chamber. One man carves symbols into the ceiling beams, red ochre marks indicating placement and alignment. Another uses a small reed dipped in ink to jot inventory notes on the wall, destined to be hidden forever once the chamber is sealed. You lean in to see better and nearly knock over a torch. You're rewarded with a glare that suggests you nearly destroyed history itself. You bow in apology. The scribe grunts and mutters something about tourists. Obscure cultural tidbit: some pyramid workers believed that certain symbols drawn inside tombs were meant not for the living, but for the stones themselves. Glyphs to teach the granite how to carry divine energy. Imagine that, writing instructions for eternity on the inside walls. It's like whispering prayers to the bones of the earth. During your break, you follow one of the stone workers to a side tunnel. Not officially part of the plan, he says, but sometimes they carve extra chambers. For balance, or burial goods, or secrets. He shows you a small alcove with unfinished walls. Inside, someone's drawn a crude painting of a man with arms outstretched, holding a bird in one hand and a loaf in the other. No one knows who painted it. It's not official. It's not approved. But there it is. A hidden mural, visible only to those who stumble upon it with dusty shoes, and no real authority. Looks like my uncle, the man says. He used to catch birds with bread. Historians still debate whether these side chambers served functional purposes, or if they were architectural experiments. Some think they were spiritual bypasses. Others believe they were the result of mid-project changes. In other words, ancient oops. Try again. You eat your lunch in that unfinished room. It's quiet. Too quiet, maybe, but the good kind. Your bread is dry. Your onion is strong enough to clear your sinuses. And your beer is as warm as the conversations outside. Still, it tastes honest. Back in the chamber, the work continues. One block is being maneuvered into place using a lever system. You're asked to steady the guiding ropes. You grip hard. The block hovers, inches above its final resting place. Every breath around you pauses. It slides into place with a deep, resonant sound, like a lid closing, like a god breathing in. One of the workers pats the stone gently. She's happy, he says. You don't ask who she is. Later, you help coat the newly set stone with a thin layer of resin. Not for adhesion, just for sealing. The smell is pungent, like burnt honey and tree bark. It sticks to your hands, your hair, your regrets, but it gives the stone a slight gleam, and you find yourself staring at your own reflection in it. Blurry, ghost-like. On your way out, climbing the angled shaft back toward the surface, you see more graffiti scratched into the walls. Some say things like Khufu's crew, or we made this. Others are jokes, caricatures of overseers with donkey ears, or drawings of a man chasing a cat holding a stolen fish. Not sacred, not serious, just human. You emerge from the shaft covered in dust, eyes squinting against the sun. The world outside is blinding, loud, a sharp contrast to the heavy silence inside the pyramid. You pass a water line. A young boy offers you a cup. You drink. It's warm and tastes faintly of clay. but your body accepts it like a blessing. Walking back to your village, you feel different. Not just tired, though you are, but slightly taller somehow. Not in height, in weight, in history. You were inside the thing that will outlive you, inside the tomb of kings and the lungs of gods. And even if no one writes your name in red ochre, even if your footsteps are buried in stone dust, the pyramid knows. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. The morning is already warm when you wake, the kind of warmth that clings. Not yet heat, not yet sweat, but a whisper of the scorched to come. A lazy blue sky drapes itself over the horizon, and the smell of barley porridge wafts through the air, mingling with the sharp edge of crushed limestone still caked in your hair. Today you're not assigned a job. That's not good news. A free worker is a dangerous thing. If you're not claimed by a team early, the overseers will find something for you. Often something experimental, poorly defined, or just unpleasant. And true to form, you're soon called to assist with an unusual task, documenting animal labor. Yes, today you're observing donkeys. You arrive at the animal enclosure near the base camp, where dozens of donkeys, oxen, and a handful of geese are tethered in loose lines. The geese, incidentally, are not part of the workforce. They're just there, menacing everyone like tiny, feathered tax collectors. A scribe meets you with a handful of reed pens and a thin sheet of papyrus. He informs you that the High Overseer wants a daily record of all animals contributing to pyramid logistics. How much weight they haul, how far they walk, how often they collapse in a dramatic fashion. Why? Because Khufu wishes to know where his stones are going. Historical fact of the day. While most images of the pyramid builders focus on human labor, animals played a crucial supporting role. Donkeys hauled goods, oxen pulled sledges, and dogs guarded the supply stores. The Egyptians meticulously documented livestock usage, even including them in temple wall carvings and tax records. Bureaucracy, it seems, is older than ambition. You spend the morning following a donkey named Knum. He's stubborn, slow, and suspicious of everyone. You're asked to record how many baskets of dried reeds he hauls from the riverside to the scaffold zones. The answer is, not many. He refuses to move without a bribe, usually a sweet date or a handful of barley. The handler, a woman with sun-creased skin and strong calves, tells you Knum used to be dependable until he saw a crocodile in the water one morning. Hasn't been right since, she says, stroking his flank. Now he thinks the river is haunted, and that it's watching. You write this down. The scribe will not be pleased. You follow another team, this time with 2 oxen dragging a loaded sled. It's slow going. The blocks they haul are smaller than coarse stones, but still monstrous to your eyes. The path is lubricated with water to reduce friction, a trick you've now seen dozens of times, but it never ceases to feel like controlled chaos. Slosh, shout, pull, slide. The oxen move with noble resignation. One of the workers pats the led ox and whispers to it. "One more haul," he says, like a coach speaking to an aging athlete. "One more, and then you nap with the birds." Obscure cultural tidbit. Egyptians often named their animals and gave them roles in myth. Certain cattle were considered sacred. Some donkeys were buried with honors. And in a few rare cases, beloved animals had their names inscribed on funerary goods. You ask the handler what happens when Knum dies. He shrugs. He'll probably outlive me. Around midday, you're asked to help with feeding. The donkey stable reeks of fermented chaff and something that might be destiny or just very old dung. You carry bundles of dry fodder into the pens, navigating a maze of stamping hooves and disapproving snorts. One of the donkeys bites your sleeve. You're told this is a compliment. A younger boy, no more than 10, offers you a water jug. He's part of the runner team, ferrying drink from the Nile to wherever it's needed. He tells you his favorite donkey is named Neferhotep because he listens when I sing. You ask him to sing. He does, quietly, a soft tune about a sun god and a fish who wants to fly. The donkey flicks his ears, doesn't bolt. That's something. Later, you walk to the storage tent, where grain is weighed, tools counted, and ropes cataloged. You hand your observations to the scribe. He glances at your scroll, then sighs. Knum only moved 3 bundles? Yes. Did you record why? Yes. Haunted river. Yes. He scribbles something in red ink, probably a note to adjust them's rations, and sends you away with a new task, shadowing the geese. You try to explain that geese aren't laborers. He says, no, but they think they are, and that's dangerous. So you follow the geese. You spend the better part of an hour watching them chase apprentices, bite sandals, and parade through the tool yard like tiny, haughty priests. One manages to steal a worker's reed brush and run 3 circles around a pillar before surrendering it under protest. You return to the scribe and tell him the geese were hostile but effective. He nods solemnly. That matches the high priest's description of temple guards. By late afternoon, you're free. Not because your work is done, but because no one else knows what to do with you. You sit beneath a date palm, peeling a fig with a chipped flint shard. The sky is beginning to bronze, and across the sand, the pyramid cuts its eternal triangle against the horizon. You see a group of dancers near the edge of the site. Not a performance, just a break, a ritual stretch of limbs. Someone's playing a lyre. The melody is soft, like the hum of a mother trying to stay awake. You walk closer. A young girl beckons you to join. You decline. She shrugs and dances anyway. It's not official. It's not religious. Just a human moment between hours of impossible labor. You sit and watch. One of the dancers spins in the dust, arms wide, eyes closed. For a brief second, she seems to float above the earth, her shadow tangled in the folds of her robe. You wonder if anyone will remember her. You wonder if anyone will remember you. Historians write about kings, about architects, occasionally a scribe, rarely the hands that built, the feet that marched, the shoulders that carried weight with no name. But you were here, and today you made note of donkeys, and you watched geese, and you saw the pyramid, still unfinished, still rising, but now, just slightly, more complete than yesterday. And that is something. That is everything. You wake with a stiff neck and the distant memory of goose bites. The bite wasn't literal, you think. Or maybe it was. One of the geese definitely tried to eat your sandals. You stretch slowly, your joints responding like reluctant servants. Outside, it's a quiet morning. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that suggests either something important is happening or something important should be happening, but isn't. You eat a flatbread that tastes like dust and ambition, and as you're finishing, Runner appears. You, he says between pants. Inspection crew. Inspection. He nods. You're checking the tools. You raise an eyebrow. All of them. He shrugs. As many as you can before sundown. You are now, officially, a tool inspector, a job you didn't know existed until 30 seconds ago. You're handed a wooden tally board and a charcoal nub, then sent to the tool compound, a shaded structure half covered by fraying linen awnings and the general fatigue of neglected inventory. Inside are rows and rows of chipped chisels, blunted dolerite pounders, splintered wooden levers, and baskets of copper implements wrapped in oiled linen like sleepy snakes. You meet your guide, a young man with perfect posture and the expression of someone who once tried to count all the sand in the desert and hasn't yet recovered. He explains the method. Each chisel gets a tap test. If it rings, it's sound. If it thuds, it's dull. You ask how many you're supposed to get through. He just laughs and hands you a mallet. Historical fact of the day. Copper tools, as used during the pyramid's construction, dulled quickly against limestone and granite. Crews required hundreds of fresh chisels a week. That meant constant sharpening and replacement. An endless, unseen effort behind the grandeur. Tool maintenance was as critical as the labor itself, though few carvings show the hands that ground, oiled, or repaired them. You begin tapping, chisel after chisel. The sound is hypnotic. Ring, ring, thud. Ring, thud, thud. Ring, ring, splinter. That last one breaks in half. You record it with a small mark and place it in the retired basket. You're told those will be melted down and reforged later. Nothing is wasted here. Not time, not copper, not even failure. As you work, other workers drift in. Some looking for replacements, others looking for an excuse to stop working. You hear complaints ranging from "this chisel is possessed" to "the sun is targeting me personally." You nod sympathetically. You felt both. One man approaches, cradling a dolerite pounding stone like it's his child. "It broke," he says solemnly. You examine it. It's worn smooth on one side and split through the middle. "What were you hitting?" you ask. He hesitates. "A mistake. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some ancient workers believed tools took on the essence of the block they were used on. That pounding granite would make your chisel grumpy, while carving temple walls would make it quiet." A few even named their favorites. You hear someone refer to his best blade as Kemet's tooth, which, judging by the way he clutches it, is not a joke. After a few hours, the shade begins to shrink. The tent awning flutters weakly. You're offered a cup of water by an apprentice who smells faintly of goat and freshly sharpened copper. He asks if you've ever seen the Grand Gallery. You blink. You haven't. You've worked near it, carried water past it, heard it mentioned like a myth, but you haven't seen it. He gestures for you to follow, and you do. The entrance isn't much to look at, just a low corridor carved with maddening precision. But as you move inside, the ceiling begins to rise, and suddenly you're standing in a space unlike anything you've ever seen. A soaring, corbelled vault stretches above you like the spine of a god. The walls are lined with massive limestone blocks, each fitted so precisely you feel as if they were placed by thought, not hands. The air is still, heavy, the kind of silence that makes you whisper without thinking. Historians still debate the exact purpose of the Grand Gallery. Some believe it was a ceremonial passage. Others suggest it was an engineering corridor used to maneuver the heavy granite beams into the king's chamber. Still others claim it had astronomical significance. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was all of those things at once. You stand at the base of the gallery, neck craned back. The light from your torch flickers along the upper ledges, casting shifting shadows. You can't help but feel small. Not in a dismissive way, in a cosmic way, like standing inside the echo of a thought too large to grasp. A worker nearby hums a low tune. It echoes upward, bouncing softly from stone to stone, as if the gallery is listening and remembering. You place your hand on the wall. Cool, smooth, impossibly ancient, yet recently touched. You think of the chisels you've been sorting all day, the broken blades, the splintered handles, the tired workers trying to make perfect things with imperfect tools. And yet this space was made with those very hands, those tools, that same daily weariness. You don't stay long. You feel you shouldn't, like a guest who's wandered too deep into the host's house. You step back into daylight blinking, disoriented. The sun is high now, brilliant and cruel. You return to the tool tent. There are still hundreds left to check. The tally board is smudged with sweat and charcoal. You pick up the mallet. Tap, tap, thud. But now each sound means more. You're not just checking tools. You're checking the heartbeat of a nation. You finish your shift well past the usual time. No one complains. No one really notices. They've all been lost in their own duties, their own versions of the pyramid, be it stone, rope, food, or song. Walking home, you pass the base of the pyramid again. A group of men is polishing a casing stone with crushed quartz. They hum as they work. You recognize the tune. It's the same one from the gallery. The same notes that bounced off ancient walls like prayers made of breath. You pass them silently. You don't want to interrupt the song. Not tonight. Morning slides in not like a sunrise, but like a blanket being tugged off your face before you're ready. The sky is pale gold, and already, voices rise around the village like steam, calling, arguing, laughing, complaining. Always complaining. Your back joins the chorus as you stretch. Every muscle speaks in the voice of a tired mason. Today's task finds you at a place both feared and revered, the stone dressing yard. It sounds harmless, almost dignified, like a room where rocks get measured for tiny linen cloaks. But no, it is the place where raw blocks are wrestled into smooth, precise shapes. It's where limestone is shaved, granite is coaxed, and dust, so much dust, fills the air like a ghost trying to possess your lungs. The yard is alive with noise. Copper chisels clink against stone in a discordant rhythm. Workers move in practiced formations. Chip, measure, smooth, curse, repeat. The overseer, a bald man with sunburned shoulders and the personality of a particularly offended scorpion, points to a pile of rough limestone and grunts. You're with Team 3. Smoothers. Ah, smoothers. The final touch before a block is deemed worthy of the pyramid's face. The work is delicate, precise, quiet compared to the chaotic pounding elsewhere, which is to say, every mistake is louder here. You are handed a handstone, round, worn smooth, surprisingly heavy. Your job is to rub it over the limestone blocks using circular motions, while someone else sprinkles sand and water to aid the grind. No hammers, no strikes, just friction, patience, and eternal, grinding repetition. Historical fact of the day. The casing stones of Khufu's pyramid were polished to such perfection that, when finished, they reflected sunlight so brightly it said the pyramid could be seen shining for miles away. Most of that outer layer is gone now, stripped over the centuries by later builders, but in its time, the pyramid didn't just stand. It gleamed. You crouch at your assigned block, already sweating before your hand touches stone. The surface is uneven, scarred by earlier cuts. Your partner, a lean, older man named Teddy, sprinkles fine desert sand across the top, then pours a trickle of water. The mixture becomes a gritty paste. You place the handstone against it, and you begin. Circle, 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 wipe, sprinkle, circle. The work is hypnotic, mindless in the best way. Your thoughts wander freely, while your arms move like they belong to someone else. You think about your family, your mother who makes onion stew with exactly 3 herbs, no more, no less. You think about your brother who once tried to sell sacred dust from the pyramid site to passing traders. It turned out to be donkey droppings. You think about the pyramid itself, the sheer size of it, the layers growing like a stepped mountain with no peak in sight. You think about yesterday, about the Grand Gallery, the way it made you feel small in a good way, like a grain of sand that gets to be part of a great shore. You think until your arms burn and the stone begins to shine. Obscure cultural tidbit. Ancient Egyptians had more than a dozen words for different kinds of stone, each one describing not just type, but quality, hardness, even spiritual resonance. There was Jiba for limestone, Menet for granite, Biken for the rare and sacred greywacke from Wadi Hammamet. Some priests believed certain stones could hold memory, or hum with energy when placed in the right structure. You wonder what name they'd give this one. The one I rubbed until my elbows cried, perhaps. At midday, the bell rings, a hollow clang from a bronze plate, suspended between 2 timbers. Lunch. You shuffle to the shade with the rest of your team. Bread, onion, salted radish. The bread is a little softer today. Someone must have added an egg. You sit in a circle, rubbing your hands on your tunic, watching a beetle fight a particularly aggressive crumb. Teddy, your polishing partner, speaks suddenly. You know how many blocks are in the pyramid? You shake your head. Over 2 million. You whistle, then pause. Who counted? He chuckles. A man with no children. Historians estimate the Great Pyramid contains roughly 2.3 million blocks, each averaging between 2 and 15 tons, each placed with a plan, a name, a purpose. But whether the number is precise, that's still debated. After 1 million or so, it's possible someone lost count. After lunch, you return to your block. The light has shifted. The surface glows faintly in the sun, water drying in slow streaks like faded memory. Teddy nods in approval. It's nearly ready. You feel proud. Ridiculously so. It's a single block, among millions, but your hands made it smooth. Your sweat gave it shine. Then tragedy. A young apprentice, arms full of tools, stumbles on a loose stone and crashes into your block. The handstone clatters away. Water spills. Sand flies. A long, thin gouge appears across the top like a crack in a mirror. Everyone freezes. The overseer storms over. His expression is thunder with a sunburn. You brace for shouting, for punishment, for shame. But then Teddy steps forward. My fault, he says. The overseer frowns. Explain. I let him polish alone. I shouldn't have. A pause. Then a grunt. Start again. By sunset. And the overseer is gone. You turn to Teddy. Why? He shrugs. You're new. Mistakes happen. What matters is how you fix them. You nod. Slowly. Then retrieve your hand stone. You start over. It's harder the second time. Your muscles are slower. Your hands clumsier. But the block responds. The gouge fades. Bit by bit, the surface returns. Not perfect, but closer. By sunset, the block is deemed acceptable. Not ideal. Not divine, but acceptable. Teddy claps you on the back. She'll hold the light, he says. You don't know if he means the block or the pyramid itself. Maybe both. You walk home in the glow of dusk, fingertips raw, tunic damp, heart oddly full. You pass other crews, still working, still laughing, still singing. You pass the same stone you polished, and you swear, for just a moment, it winks at you. You sleep deeply that night, not because you're well rested, but because your body has no other option. It folds itself into sleep like a closing door, and for hours, nothing moves. Not even dreams. But morning returns, as it always does. Soft at first, then aggressive, then undeniable. A distant clatter of pottery, a cough from a neighbor, the screech of a donkey that seems personally offended by the sunrise. You peel yourself off your mat like bread from a hot oven. You expect another assignment at the stone yard. You're wrong. Today, you've been chosen for something with a title, so long it sounds like a spell. Assistant to the sacred logistics coordinator of the ceremonial procession path. You blink at the announcement. So does everyone else. You're delivering incense, the messenger explains flatly, to the upper causeway priests. That's not what you expected. Still, you take the leather pouch with the sacred resins, tie it carefully around your waist, and follow the rising path toward the causeway, a broad ceremonial ramp connecting the Nile harbor to the mortuary temple beside the pyramid's base. The causeway is lined with workers today, not hauling blocks, but placing decorative elements. Smooth paving stones, bas-reliefs of animals, reeds, boats, gods, and offerings. This isn't the brute labor of the inner pyramid. This is the storytelling skin of the entire structure. The part meant to be seen, remembered, worshipped. You make your way past engravers kneeling at the base of walls, their chisels tapping delicate lines into sandstone like tiny bursts of poetry. A group of artists nearby grinds pigments, blue from azurite, green from malachite, red from ochre, black from soot and bone. The colors shimmer in the morning light. Sacred, but vibrant. This isn't decoration. This is communication with eternity. Historical fact of the day. These ceremonial causeways often featured long stone corridors richly decorated with religious scenes, depicting the pharaoh's journey from life to death and then to divine rebirth. Some ran over 500 meters long. The artwork not only honored the king, it told stories of statecraft, nature, piety, and power. And like all things Egyptian, it was meant to last. You reach the top of the slope, where a linen canopy shades a small shrine in progress. Two priests in white linen robes, nearly spotless, which frankly feels like cheating, greet you with slow, calculated nods. They accept the incense pouch reverently, opening it with both hands as if unwrapping a living thing. One lifts a small handful to his nose and breathes in deeply. Boswellia, he says. You nod as if you've always known that frankincense is called Boswellia. They wave you to sit. You do. And for the next hour, you do nothing but watch. Not labor. Not carry. Just observe as the priests offer the resin to a small, ceremonial flame, invoking the gods of the West, the direction of death, transformation, and rest. The smoke curls upward, thin, pale, fragrant. Then they begin humming, low, wordless. It reverberates in the stone around you. It's not music. Not really. More like a tone that exists inside your ribs as much as your ears. Obscure cultural tidbit. Many Egyptians believed that incense smoke could carry messages to the gods. Each type of resin had its own use. Myrrh for cleansing, frankincense for clarity, kifi for dreams. Some temple rituals required smoke before speech, because what good is a prayer if no divine nose has caught its scent? You leave quietly after the offering. Not because anyone told you to, but because you feel it's time. Back outside, the causeway is livelier. Artists are painting carved figures now, their brushes made from reeds and animal hairs. You stop to watch a girl your age add color to a hunting scene. Heron in hand, dog at heel, fish flying through painted water. You compliment her work. She doesn't look up. "It's not mine," she says. You frown. "You're painting it." She shrugs. "It's his story." She points to the name glyph etched beside the image. A mid-ranking overseer who apparently enjoyed hunting more than hauling stone. "Still," you say, "you're telling it." She dips her brush and smiles faintly. "Then I'll tell it beautifully." As you walk downhill, you're suddenly struck by how much of this pyramid isn't stone. It's memory. It's names. It's scenes of people fishing, singing, farming, offering. A woman holding a lotus. A boy chasing a bird. A priest opening the mouth of a statue so the soul can enter. It's 1,000 human moments carved so the king could carry them into the next world. You pause midway down the causeway, looking back up at the slope, and imagine the funeral procession this is all preparing for. The day when Khufu's gilded sarcophagus will glide up this path, pulled by rows of robed men, followed by chants and incense and tears painted into ceremonial masks. The causeway, by then, will be smooth as an idea, bright with color, ringing with song. But today, it is dust and paint and sweat. And somewhere, back in the yard, there are still hundreds of blocks waiting for polish. You return to base, just before sunset. The scribe who sent you gives you a bored look. Did they accept the incense? Yes. Did they record it? They were humming. He snorts. That counts. Then he tosses you a small token, a rounded chip of carnelian, carved with the sign of Ankh life, for transport. You frown. This is more than usual. High priest said the incense arrived warm. That's good luck. You nod, pocket the token, and head home. The sky is a deep orange now. The pyramid glows at its edges, its shadow stretching longer than most cities. You think of the smoke curling into the air, of the stories on the walls, of the painter who refused to sign her work because it wasn't hers, of the chant still humming faintly in your bones. Not everything built here is stone. Some of it is soul. You wake to the distant sound of metal on metal, tools being sharpened before the heat sets in. It's still early. The sky hasn't yet chosen its final color. There's a moment of stillness, just one, before your feet touch the ground. You hold it in your chest, like a breath too sacred to release. Today is different. Today, they say, you're going inside the pyramid again, but not to polish or measure or carry. No, today you're joining the alignment crew, the men who work in the shadows to ensure that the universe itself nods in approval of this rising monument. You don't quite understand what this means. Not yet. You're given a coil of rope, a plumb bob, and a wax tablet with a single mark etched into it. You ask what it's for. The overseer, a man with no eyebrows and the voice of a cliff, says, "You'll see." So you walk, past the stone yards and animal pens, past the paint-smeared artists and the humming priests, past the usual dust and noise into a narrow shaft that leads downward again, deeper than you've ever gone. The air changes the farther you go. It becomes still, close, as if the stone itself is listening to every breath you take. You enter a chamber known only by its function, the subterranean vault. Here, deep beneath the base of the pyramid, a small crew works by torchlight, measuring the chamber walls with tools so rudimentary they border on poetic, twine, pegs, a handful of stars remembered from last night's sky. This chamber isn't finished. In fact, it's rough, carved directly into bedrock, unpolished, irregular. It's as though someone began a thought and then abandoned it. Historical fact of the day. The subterranean chamber in the Great Pyramid was dug directly into the bedrock below the structure, but its exact purpose remains unknown. Some believe it was an early burial chamber before plans changed. Others think it was a symbolic underworld, never meant to be used but essential to the cosmic design. And yes, historians still debate its intent. You're told to help measure the east wall. The chief aligner, a tall, silent man with the permanent squint of someone who stares at string more than sunlight, Shows you how to anchor the rope at one end, stretch it taut, and adjust its height using a thin sliver of wood shaved to specific lengths. Every shift of the rope is noted, every angle discussed, every deviation measured in tenths of a finger's width. It's exhausting work, not because of the lifting, but because of the stillness required, the focus, the demand for calm precision in a world that is otherwise noise and sweat and motion. You hold the plumb bob steady while the chief aligner squats nearby, eyeing the tension in the rope. The weight swings gently at first, then slowly stills. "Perfect," he whispers. "The stars would be pleased." You raise an eyebrow. "Stars." He points to a chalk line on the far wall. "That's the north mark." "How do you know it's north?" He taps his head. "We watch the sky. From the roof." Turns out, part of this crew's job is stargazing. Not for beauty, but for math. They track the stars at night, then return here in the day to align shafts, corridors, and chambers according to cosmic geometry. The pyramid isn't just a tomb, it's a compass, a clock, a map of heaven. You feel suddenly unworthy to hold the rope. One of the younger apprentices joins you. He's excited, breathless. He tells you about the northern shaft, a narrow tunnel being drilled outward from the king's chamber above. "It points to the circumpolar stars," he says. "The ones that never set. They spin, but they never die." You nod, not because you fully understand, but because he does. And that's enough. Obscure cultural tidbit. The Egyptians believed that when a pharaoh died, his soul would ascend to join the imperishable stars, the circumpolar ones that never dip below the horizon. These stars were seen as eternal, unfading. The pyramid, aligned precisely to their paths, was not just a grave. It was a launching pad. At midday, a priest arrives, not for ritual, but for silence. The crew pauses, sets their tools aside, and sits. The priest opens a scroll and begins to read, not out loud, but silently. As he does, he walks the length of the chamber, stopping at each wall, each marked line, each rope and peg and chalk glyph. You watch him, the way he moves with reverence, not for the room itself, but for what it represents. The weight of stillness returns. You think of all the rooms you've passed, the chambers, the shafts, the ramps, the boats, the polishing, the drawings, the incense, the donkeys, and here you are, in a dark hole in the bedrock with a rope and a prayer. Suddenly, everything feels connected, like the pyramid is not being built in parts, but woven. You exit the chamber late in the day, blinking against the returning light, like someone reborn. The chief aligner pats your shoulder before disappearing back into the depths. You walk back slowly. At the base of the pyramid, you pause to drink from the water station. A girl fills your cup and asks where you've been. "Below," you say. She nods. "The rooms with no air?" "Exactly." She shudders. "You're braver than me." You don't feel brave. You feel humbled, like a word spoken too quietly to be heard, but still meant. Back at the village, your mother asks if you had a good day. You shrug. "Did you build something?" You pause. "Yes," you say, "but it's not finished yet." She smiles. "It never is." That night, you climb to the roof and lie on your back, staring at the stars. You search for the ones that never set, and when you find them, you whisper, "He's coming to you. We're making sure of it." And the stars wink. Not a flare, not a shout, just a nod, as if they already knew. You wake with grit in your eyes and the distant rumble of carts outside your door. The air is thick already, as if the sun decided to arrive early and uninvited. Today, your body hurts in new places. A muscle just beneath your ribs hums with protest, and your right wrist feels as though it tried to chisel stone in its sleep. A knock comes before you can sit up fully. A young courier, barely old enough to grow a beard, stands outside holding a clay tablet. "By order of the northern crew," he says, already turning to leave. "They need a sandrunner." You groan softly. Sandrunner is one of those titles that sounds noble until you understand it means person who carries buckets of hot sand to dry surfaces and fill wall joints. Still, you throw on your tunic, grab a water flask, and follow the courier's disappearing footprints. The northern face of the pyramid is quieter than the southern and western sites. Fewer teams work here. Fewer voices. The light is different too, cleaner somehow, with the shadow of the rising pyramid falling across the sand like the arm of a sleeping god. You arrive at a low wall of half-finished casing stones. A crew is smoothing and fitting the last few layers before another row is set. You're handed a flat scoop and a woven bucket. Sand, the foreman says. Clean, dry, fine. 3 rounds, then lunch. So you walk, farther than you'd like, across the pale dunes to where the sand has been sifted and dried in trays, purified by sun and ritual. You fill your bucket. You walk back. You pour it carefully into shallow seams between blocks, helping to anchor and level them. And you repeat. Walk. Fill. Pour. Wipe sweat. Repeat. Historical fact of the day. While the exact techniques used in leveling pyramid blocks remain partly mysterious, it's likely that dry sand played a vital role, not just in transportation, but in leveling, packing, and positioning stone. Sand, humble as it seems, was one of the most trusted engineering materials in the ancient world. It flowed. It adjusted. It forgave. You admire how the sand moves, how it finds the lowest space and fills it completely. You try to be like the sand today. Soft where needed. Solid when stepped on. Quiet but essential. During your 3rd run, you stop to rest beside a water trough shared between workers and donkeys. A man sits nearby, mending a cracked ceramic water jar with string and resin. You recognize him. A former hauler turned craftsman after his shoulder gave out. His name is Seba. He sees you looking. They say the pyramid will be done in 10 years, he says, not looking up. You know it. You've heard the same. He adds, it's already done in my dreams. You ask what he means. Every night, I see it finished, he says. White and gold. No scaffolds. No sweat. Just peace. Sometimes I'm inside it. Sometimes I'm on top of it. But I always wake up before I see the end. You don't respond. You just sip your water and think about your own dreams. More confusing than peaceful. Always full of shifting corridors and falling stones, and someone shouting your name just before you turn the corner. After lunch, the foreman assigns you to shadow a joiner, a specialist who fits stone blocks so tightly they look grown rather than placed. The joiner is a woman, older than your mother, sharp-eyed and silent. She uses a reed stylus and a layer of pigment to mark high points on the surface of a block. Then she scrapes, tests, adjusts, scrapes again. You watch, mesmerized, as she presses 2 stones together and they click into place like a door locking from the inside. You want to try? She asks. You nod nervously. She hands you the stylus and points to a low block with an uneven corner. You dab it with pigment, lower the top stone slowly, and watch where the marks transfer. She nods. Now shave the high spots. You do, clumsily, but the process begins to make sense. You're not shaping stone. You're listening to it, letting it tell you where it fits, where it resists, where it wants to go. Obscure cultural tidbit. Joiners were sometimes called whispers of the wall in early worker graffiti. While the term was likely tongue-in-cheek, there's truth in it. The best joiners didn't force stone into position. They coaxed it, like midwives of architecture. You spend the rest of the afternoon helping her finish a long joint at the corner of a ledge. As the sun slants lower, she wipes her tools clean and speaks again. My father worked on Sneferu's pyramid, she says quietly. The bent one. You glance up. Everyone knows of it, the pyramid at Dashur, with its strange shift and angle halfway up. A mistake? A change in design? Scholars are still unsure. He used to say, she continues, that a perfect pyramid is made from imperfect stones, as long as they're placed with care. You nod. You like that. She hands you a piece of flint. Keep this, she says. It cuts softly. You thank her and tuck it into your satchel. Walking back at dusk, your feet drag with the weight of the day. But your mind hums, not just from fatigue, but from quiet satisfaction. You didn't lift anything massive. You didn't polish a monument. You didn't chant or carve or even see a priest. But today you joined. You learned how to fit one thing into another so precisely that not even light could sneak between. And you remember Saba's dream. The finished pyramid. White, gold, silent. You realize now, maybe it's not about the top. Maybe it's about this. The moment you press one piece into another and whisper, stay, hold, belong. You rise today before the sun does. Not because you were called, but because your body wakes you. Something inside knows that this morning isn't like the others. It feels heavier, like the air is waiting. The sky is still a charcoal smear on the horizon when you step outside. The village is mostly silent. Just the soft scraping of a broom, the click of a door latch, the long exhale of a donkey still dreaming of freedom. You head toward the pyramid site before anyone summons you, carrying nothing, just your feet and curiosity, and the flint the joiner gave you yesterday, tucked safely inside your satchel. You haven't used it yet. You don't know when you will, but it feels like something you were meant to hold. You reach the southern slope, just as the first hint of gold touches the upper blocks. There's no fanfare, no chant, no priest with oil, just the pyramid greeting the sun with the quiet dignity of something that knows it will outlive the stars. A group of workers gathers near the base. Not your usual team. These are ceremonial haulers, chosen for strength, precision, and, oddly enough, appearance. You've heard about this, the setting of the capstone, but you didn't think it would happen this soon, or that you'd be anywhere near it. The capstone, or pyramidion, as some call it, is the final piece. The top, the point, the culmination of decades of labor, planning, error, brilliance, and dust. It is both literal and symbolic. Once it is placed, the structure becomes complete in the eyes of gods and men. Historical fact of the day. Ancient capstones were often covered in electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, so they would catch the first and last rays of the sun each day. For the Pyramid of Khufu, no capstone has been found, though many believe it existed. Some say it was never placed. Others say it was stolen. Others whisper that it vanished when the gods took it back. You stand in silence as the workers prepare. The capstone is not large, at least not compared to the blocks below. But its weight, emotional, spiritual, cosmic, is immense. It sits on a polished sled, wrapped in linen and adorned with painted symbols. Nearby, a priest smears it with unguents and murmurs a blessing in a tongue so old you can't even guess its meaning. Then, unexpectedly, your name is called. The overseer waves you forward. You've been near every part of her, he says, gesturing toward the pyramid. So you'll walk behind. You're not hauling. You're not chanting. You're simply walking, witnessing, as the final stone is led up the last, temporary ramp. It's steep, narrow, flanked by ropes and guided by a dozen men, whose legs shake with the effort but never stop. You follow at a respectful distance, every step feeling like a drumbeat under your heels. Halfway up, the wind picks up, dry and high and carrying dust that tastes like memory. You reach the top just as the capstone settles into its resting place, a small, square platform no wider than a sleeping mat. Below you, the entire pyramid fans out like a mountain of order. Blocks upon blocks, pathways, shadows. Workers pause mid-step. A world made of human will. The capstone slides into position with a soft thud. The priest raises both hands and begins to sing. Not loudly, but purely. The words flow like water, ancient and slow. And the crew joins him, one voice at a time, until the peak of the pyramid vibrates with harmony. You close your eyes and let the sound pass through you. It doesn't lift. It settles into the stone, into your ribs, into the spaces between breath. Obscure cultural tidbit. The Egyptians believed that the pyramidion was the physical meeting point between earth and sky, where the soul of the pharaoh could ascend to the heavens. It wasn't just a decorative point. It was a portal. After the song ends, the workers quietly begin to descend. The wind continues its soft hum. You linger a little longer. You step close, too close, maybe, and place your hand on the stone. It's warm from the sunlight, smoother than expected, and smells faintly of oil and crushed herbs. You don't say anything, but something inside you whispers, "We are done, but not finished." You carry that with you all the way down. Back at base, people cheer. Others cry. Some simply go back to work. There are still tools to mend, ledgers to mark, carts to fix. The pyramid may be capped, but the project continues. The ramps must be dismantled, the ceremonial causeway prepared, the sarcophagus moved, the temples filled. You find your friend Seba, the former Hollerturn Jarminder, sitting beneath a date palm. It's done, you say. He shakes his head. Almost. You smirk. You've seen it in your dreams, haven't you? Yes, he says, eyes distant. And in my dreams, no one touches it after the capstone. It just glows. You sit beside him. You say nothing for a while. Later, you visit the eastern face, where the morning light reflects off polished limestone, blinding in its brightness. Workers are sweeping, clearing dust from seams with reeds and small fans. You walk over and help, not because someone told you to, but because something does. You clear a line of dust. Another. Another. Soon a small square shines again. You see your reflection. Not clearly, but there you are. Dusty, tired, small, and for the first time, part of something whole. Then you remember the flint. You reach into your satchel, pull it out, and trace a tiny mark behind one of the polished stones. Not a signature, not a name, just a line. One of many. Your line. The pyramid is capped, but the world doesn't pause. In fact, the next morning feels busier than any before it, like the capping didn't mark the end, but instead pulled the bowstring tighter on something even greater. The site hums with renewed urgency. Everywhere, people move faster, sweeping, unloading, chiseling, adjusting, as if the pyramid is suddenly aware of its own shape and has decided to straighten its collar. You are assigned to the East Mortuary Temple, where preparations are underway for what everyone whispers will be the king's procession. Not today, not this week, but soon. And before that happens, the temple must be finished, blessed, painted, and filled. The temple sits just east of the pyramid, where the sun rises. It's meant to receive Khufu's soul as he transitions from man to God, from ruler to Ra incarnate. The stone here is finer, smoother, the design more deliberate. Every line points inward, toward a place where the mortal and divine might touch fingers. You arrive to find the foundation mostly laid, the walls half decorated, the columns recently erected. A flurry of workers busies themselves with lifting slabs and setting lintels. You're sent to assist a man carving wall reliefs near the entrance. His name is Mariah, and he doesn't speak for the first 2 hours. He carves in silence, focused entirely on a panel showing Khufu seated before a table of offerings. Bread, beer, figs, onions, cattle, and geese. Always geese. You're starting to suspect that in the afterlife, the king will be served goose at every meal, whether he wants it or not. Your job is to brush dust from the carving after each cut. It's repetitive, but strangely intimate. You watch the image appear slowly beneath the chisel, like something remembered rather than created. Eventually, Mariah speaks. You ever lose a carving? You blink. Lose. He nods. You think it's going to be a basket of dates, but the angle's wrong. One tap too deep, and suddenly it's a sheep. You chuckle. He sighs. Happens more than you'd think. Sometimes we follow a line that doesn't belong. Then, after a pause, he says something you won't forget. Stone forgives nothing, but time forgives everything. You think about that as the carving continues. Historical fact of the day. Mortuary temples were essential to a pharaoh's eternal legacy. Offerings would be made there long after the burial. Meals, songs, prayers, to sustain the soul in the afterlife. These temples were both spiritual kitchens and eternal offices, where the business of divine maintenance never stopped. They were staffed not by laborers, but priests, scribes, and seasonal performers. You help haul and offering tables next, thick, flat slabs with carved depressions for jars and trays. Each is polished until it reflects the morning sun. You nearly drop one. Your foot slips in a puddle of spilled oil, and for a moment you're sure your afterlife will involve being mocked by kitchen spirits for all eternity. But you recover. You set the table. You bow, though no one asked you to. A procession arrives in the late morning. High priests, architects, a group of musicians with handheld lyres and delicate flutes. They inspect the temple's alignment, the spacing of the columns, the height of the walls, the way the shadows fall across the offering court. One of them stops by you. A woman, younger than expected, with sharp eyes and a strand of gold wrapped around her wrist like a private sun. "You worked on the east face?" she asks. You nod. "Some sanding. And the base joints." She gestures toward the entrance. "Come, see your work from the other side." You follow her. You step into the inner court of the mortuary temple, and you gasp. It is suddenly, and without warning, beautiful. The way the light pours through the slats above the pillars, the way the carved walls catch shadows in their grooves, the way each stone sings quietly beneath your feet. You realize you've helped build something not just massive, not just permanent, but alive. The priestess says, "Most workers never see it from here. Only the king's soul will enter this court." You ask why she brought you in. "Because stone remembers," she replies, "but only people witness." Obscure cultural tidbit. While much of Egypt's labor was organized through strict hierarchy, there were rituals where workers were quietly honored. An anonymous block might be touched by a priest before final placement, or a helper invited to step inside a holy space before it was sealed forever. These moments weren't recorded, but they happened. Whispers in granite. You leave the inner court different. Not taller, not stronger, just a little more whole. That evening, the ramps begin to come down. It starts slowly. The removal of temporary planks, pulleys, grease sledges. Dust rises in thick. Golden clouds as scaffolds are dismantled, revealing more of the clean white casing beneath. The pyramid sheds its scaffolding like a molting bird. You and a dozen others are assigned to roll up ropes, clean buckets, and gather tools left behind. It's the first time you've seen workers undoing something, and it feels strange, like watching the tide pull back after a flood. You see the cart once used to haul offering jars, abandoned, a pulley system discarded by a sandstone block. You find a lost reed pen, dried but still faintly red. You pocket it. It feels like a story no one finished writing. Someone nearby says, "They'll close the chambers soon." You nod. "I know." Think he's watching. You look up at the capstone, gold and silver, burning in the last light of day. I think he's already inside. You sleep that night under the stars, too tired to reach your roof. Just a mat in the sand near the temple wall. In the distance, drums sound. Soft, ritualistic. The priests are preparing. Somewhere deep inside the pyramid, the king's chamber waits. Empty now, but not for long. You wonder if you'll be asked to help carry him. And something in you both hopes and dreads that answer. You wake in the sand, wrapped in linen, half dreaming of footsteps echoing through long stone halls. For a few seconds, you're still there, in the chamber, the pyramid, the heart of something ancient and vast. Then the world creeps back in, a whispering wind, the scent of ash from a nearby cook fire, and the ache of a day that hasn't even started. You sit up slowly. Around you, other workers are stirring. Some stretch, some cough. One man curses the ants that colonized his breakfast. Then you hear it, a horn, low, hollow, carried on the wind. It is not an alarm. It is not a signal for hauling or assembly. It is the sound you've all been told to expect, but hope might be delayed just a little longer. It's the signal that the king's body has arrived. Khufu, builder of the Great Pyramid, child of the sun god Ra, divine ruler of 2 lands, is dead. Not that anyone says it plainly. No one dares. They say, he has departed. They say, he walks west now. They say, the soul has risen. But the meaning is the same. He's coming home. Your foreman finds you before you can fully process it. You're with the Northern Processional Team, he says. Chamber support. He hands you a clay pendant on a leather cord, etched with the eye of Horus. You don't ask what it means. You just put it around your neck and start walking. By the time you reach the mortuary temple, the entire eastern face of the pyramid is alive. Priests in white linen and golden sashes stand in rows, faces painted, some holding incense burners, others sacred symbols, ankhs, crooks, flails. A line of musicians kneel to the side, warming up with slow, circular melodies that seem to spiral into the sky. And then the procession begins. The royal bark, shaped like the solar boat of Ra himself, rolls forward on a wheeled sledge pulled by dozens of men in perfect synchrony. It's adorned with gold leaf and lapis inlay, flanked by canopy poles bearing falcon feathers and lotus blossoms. On the bark lies a long black sarcophagus, carved with protective spells and flanked by statues of Isis and Nephthys, arms raised in eternal lament. Historical fact of the day. Pharaohs of the Old Kingdom were buried with elaborate ceremonies that often lasted weeks. The journey from embalming site to the burial chamber was sacred, scripted, and highly symbolic. The body passed through temples, along causeways, over ramps, mirroring the journey of the sun through the sky and the soul through the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. Your job is to walk behind the bark, carrying ceremonial oil. Not to pour it, just to carry it. But it's heavy, wrapped in clay, sealed in wax. It's scent rich with myrrh and cedar. The oil, they say, is for the final ritual, the opening of the mouth, when the statue of the king will be given breath again in the afterlife. You enter the pyramid through a narrow corridor you once polished months ago. But now, torches light the way. Walls that were bare are painted with vibrant spells. The air is heavy with incense and breath, and the weight of memory. The king's chamber awaits. You've only been here once, as a silent helper. But today, it is alive with purpose. The sarcophagus is lifted slowly, hoisted by sacred bearers onto the prepared platform. The chamber glows red and gold from torchlight bouncing off the granite walls. It feels less like a room and more like a throat, about to speak. The priests begin the ritual. Chants echo, incantations layered over one another, some whispered, some sung. The high priest approaches the stone coffin with a bronze tool shaped like a forked reed. He dips it into the oil you've carried and touches it gently to the statue's lips. The spell is ancient, powerful, familiar to every Egyptian since birth. May his mouth be opened. May his eyes see. May his feet walk. May his soul fly. You stand in a row with others, torchbearers, incense carriers, stone fitters, scribes, all silent, witnesses to a moment so delicate it feels like the air might shatter if anyone breathes too loud. And then it's done. The coffin is sealed, not with panic or haste, but with grace, with trust, with completion. The chamber is not closed immediately. It will remain open for another day while the final rites conclude. But this was the heart of it. The soul has been given direction, the body a home, the pyramid its purpose. Obscure cultural tidbit. It was believed that the spirit of a pharaoh separated into multiple parts at death. Ka, Ba, Ak, each requiring different rites, symbols, and care. The opening of the mouth ensured the Ba could recognize its body and return to it, while the pyramid helped guide the Ak upward to the imperishable stars. As you leave the chamber, your footsteps feel different. Heavier, yes, but also calmer. The walls behind you now hold a king. Not a ruler, not a builder, a being between worlds. Outside, the sun is dipping low. The pyramid glows in the soft orange of dusk, and for the first time, it looks still, as though it's finally exhaled. You walk to the Eastern Temple again, where offerings are being arranged. Bread in long stacks, fish, onions, beer in polished jars, geese, of course. You place your oil jar among them, not because anyone asked you to, but because it feels right. A priest nods to you. You nod back. No words are needed. Later, as the stars begin to appear, you return to the roof of your home. You lie back and stare upward. The air is cool. The sky is clear. And there, above you, are the imperishable stars. They do not rise. They do not set. They spin in quiet circles, night after night. You whisper, "He's among you now." And for a long while, you just watch them turn. The day after the king's burial is not quiet. You expect it to be solemn, reverent, hushed. But the pyramid site is bustling. Workers move with unusual purpose. Priests are in constant motion, and scribes run errands with such intensity you'd think time itself was falling apart. You are given no assignment that morning, which usually means one thing. Someone's about to hand you a very strange one. Sure enough, A scribe with ink on his fingers and panic in his eyes pulls you aside. We need hands in the archive chamber. You blink. The what? The chamber beneath the temple. The place we don't talk about. Ah, you're starting to learn that when someone refers to something without referring to it, it usually means it's important. You follow him down a long colonnade past the Eastern Temple, turning at a corner where fewer feet tread, into a narrow doorway barely wide enough for your shoulders. A staircase curves downward, carved into limestone. The air cools. The light fades. A torch is handed to you, and then you enter the archive chamber. It's not a chamber in the usual sense. It's a series of vaulted storage corridors, carved beneath the temple platform, dry and precise, filled with clay jars sealed in wax, baskets woven tight, wooden boxes painted with signs and glyphs. The walls are plain. No decoration, no offerings, just records. This is where the pharaoh's ledgers are stored. The tax rolls, grain counts, artisan rosters, quarry permits, religious instructions, project schedules, even tool inventory. All of it stacked, labeled, hidden from view, preserved for someone to remember. Historical fact of the day. Ancient Egypt maintained some of the most advanced administrative records in the ancient world. Entire priesthoods and official classes were dedicated to record-keeping. Some temples maintained House of Life archives, which functioned as both libraries and bureaucratic data centers, storing everything from harvest cycles to spell books to workers' attendance logs. You're told to sort broken seals and collect any tablets with cracks, warps, or faded ink for restoration. You kneel in the dust and begin working, gently lifting the weight of history with both hands. Some of the records are dull. Shipment of copper chisels, 10 missing. 4 goats delivered, 3 healthy. 42 jars of beer sent to crew at West Ramp. That last one has a tiny drawing of a grumpy face beside it. You smirk. Others are more mysterious. You find a scroll half destroyed but still legible. It reads, Day 204 of year 23. The sun did not rise as expected. The priest said nothing. We continued our tasks. You reread it. The sun did not rise. You look at the seal. It's marked with a name you recognize. A temple overseer who died years ago. You call over the scribe who brought you. He frowns. That's not for the living to worry about. Just record the damage. But later, when he thinks you aren't looking, he slips it into a different basket. You continue sorting. Your fingers turn gray with dust. Your knees ache. Your mind hums with the weight of it all. This is not the pyramid's grandeur. This is its underbelly. The thoughts that made the stones move. Obscure cultural tidbit. Egyptians believed writing had divine power. The god Thoth, scribe of the heavens, was said to have invented language itself. Even a name scratched on pottery was more than a label. It was a claim of existence. To write something was to give it form in the world, and to erase it was to kill it. You realize you're surrounded by 1,000 tiny living things, words. One record catches your eye. A plain board, unpainted. Just 4 lines. He asked to walk the final stone before he died. They let him. He kissed it. Then he was gone. No name. No date. Just that. You sit with it for a while, then place it gently back where it was. At midday, the High Archivist enters. He's an old man with milky eyes, guided by a boy with bare feet and ink-stained hands. The Archivist does not look at you. He just says, "There is no pyramid without us." You nod, not daring to speak. He continues, "They build upward. We build forever." Then he turns and disappears behind a curtain of linen that leads to a room you're told never to enter. The rest of the day passes in silence. Occasionally you hear the scratching of reed pens, the quiet shuffle of a jar being moved, or the soft click of clay seals being pressed with stamps. You think of your friends still hauling stone, still fitting blocks, still sweeping dust from the pyramid's base. They work in light, in noise, in heat, but here in the cool, forgotten dark, you begin to understand something profound. The pyramid isn't just stone. It's intention. It's not just what was placed. It's what was planned, remembered, tracked, preserved, balanced. By evening, your fingers are numb. Your eyes are red. You haven't seen the sky all day, but before you leave, you ask the scribe, "Do the records ever leave?" He shakes his head. "No. When the chamber is sealed, it will stay sealed." "For how long?" He shrugs. "Until someone finds a reason to open it." You climb the stairs back to the surface. The sun is almost gone, the pyramid silhouetted against a sky bleeding orange and violet. You sit by the edge of the temple wall and watch the light disappear behind the capstone. You wonder what will be remembered. Not the names, maybe. Not the scratches of your fingers on a broken tablet. Not the missing chisels or the three-legged goat. But maybe someone will find that four-line message. And maybe they'll know that someone kissed the last stone, and that the pyramid, for a breath, was held in one man's heart. And maybe that's enough. You wake long after sunrise, your first late morning in moons. No summons, no shouting, no tools pressed into your hand before you've blinked the dust from your eyes. It's a strange feeling, this stillness, like walking across ground where something important just happened, and no one's willing to step again. The pyramid is finished. The king is sealed inside, and yet people still arrive at dawn. They sweep the paths. They polish the stone. They light incense before the temple doors. But it all feels slower now, as if time itself is breathing for the first time in decades. You walk through the village with no assignment, no task to chase. The air smells of date cakes and charred garlic. You chew a piece of soft bread and wonder, what is your role, now that the pyramid stands? You head toward the eastern temple. The crowd there is thinner than usual. A few priests tend to the offering tables, which seem to multiply even though the king will never eat from them. Some children are being taught to chant the opening lines of the Prayer of Light, their voices warbling like uncertain birds. And in the back, near the water basin, you spot her, the joiner, the woman who taught you how to read the stone with your hands. She's seated on a flat block, sharpening her flint. Not working, just shaping. You approach. She looks up and gestures to the space beside her. You sit. For a long moment, there's only the whisper of stone against flint. Then she says, "You know what happens now." You shake your head. She smiles faintly. "We wait until someone decides what to do with us." You frown. "We." She nods toward the pyramid. The workers. The witnesses. The ones who remember what it was before it became. You both sit in silence again. Then she speaks. Some will leave. Back to farms. To river towns. To forgotten wives and remembered debts. Some will stay. To guard it. Clean it. Tell stories to the ones who come. You nod. She glances at you. And you. You're not sure. Not yet. Instead of answering, you rise and walk away. Not toward the village. Not toward the tool shed or the food tent, but toward the western field. You've heard whispers, rumors, really, that something is being built beyond the pyramid. A small group of men, working alone, quiet, separate, no orders posted, no overseers yelling. You follow the narrow path, past a grove of papyrus, past an old quarry scarred with claw-like ridges. The ground dips, rises, then you see it, a small pyramid. Half-built, simple, nothing like Khufu's. This is no monument for a king. This is a worker's tomb. You approach slowly. A young man is stacking mud brick along a low foundation wall. His back is straight, his face serious. He nods at you. You nod back. "Is this," you start. "For one of ours," he says, not looking up. "A block mover. Died the day after the capstone. Heart gave out." You step closer. "They gave him a pyramid?" "Not official," he replies, "but he built one. We figured he should have one." You stare at it. It's barely waist-high. No casing stones. No granite. Just dust and willpower. But it's real. Obscure cultural tidbit. While few tombs for laborers survive, archaeologists have found burial sites near Giza, marked with modest structures, indicating that workers who died during pyramid construction were honored, sometimes by their peers, sometimes even by royal decree. These were not slaves. They were builders, and some were loved enough to be given stone, even after death. You offer to help. The man nods again. You work beside him for the rest of the day. mixing mud with straw, pouring it into wooden molds, setting it to dry. The sun is relentless, but the wind is kind. By afternoon, others arrive. One brings beer. One brings dried figs. Someone starts singing, a low melody, half lullaby, half prayer. No priest leads it. No decree starts it. It simply rises. You wipe sweat from your brow and smile. You're building again. Not a mountain, not a stairway to the stars, but a memory, a thank you, a final brick for a man whose name only 10 people will ever speak, and maybe that's enough. As the sun slips toward the hills, someone places a small offering near the brick tomb, a carved reed flute, cracked but whole. Someone else lays a handful of wildflowers. No one speaks. No one needs to. You stand back and look at the structure. It's uneven, lopsided, and perfect, because you know that this, too, will outlast something. Not centuries, maybe, but a few seasons, a few stories, a few small wins. And when the dust reclaims it, it will do so gently. You head home under a sky just beginning to gather stars. You pass the pyramid, massive, eternal, silent. But tonight, your heart belongs to the smaller one, the one made by hands like yours, for someone who belonged. And as you reach your doorway and turn to glance back, the breeze shifts and carries with it the faint sound of singing. The morning after the worker's tomb is finished, the air feels still. Not dead, not silent, just still, like the breath between heartbeats. You rise slowly, body sore in a different way, not from stone or rope, but from something gentler, from purpose, from the weight of a day spent building something no one commanded, but everyone felt was necessary. At the water trough, you overhear 2 men talking. Did you hear about the scroll? What scroll? One of the old ones. Someone found it sealed in the wall behind the king's chamber. You blink. The king's chamber? Sealed. That was supposed to be final. You dry your face and head in the direction of the temple, where sure enough, a crowd is gathering near the entrance to the narrow corridor that winds deep into the pyramid's heart. Only this time, the crowd is not workers or guards or even priests. It's scribes. Scribes in rows, sitting cross-legged on mats of woven reed, furiously copying symbols from a tablet held by one pale, shaking man in the center. You edge closer. A temple attendant sees your curiosity and nods. One of the fitters heard hollow behind the wall while clearing dust. They opened it, found a tablet sealed in pitch. Old script, older than the rest. You ask, what does it say? The man shrugs. They're still translating, but it's not a curse, not a prayer, just instructions. Historical fact of the day. While no such scroll has yet been discovered in the Great Pyramid, Egyptologists have uncovered papyri at sites like Wadi al-Jarf that contain detailed construction notes, shipping manifests, and even day-by-day records of workers delivering limestone to Giza. These documents are among the oldest surviving examples of organized labor in human history. One of the scribes looks up. It's a message to the next builders, he says. You frown. Next builders? Yes. Whoever tries something like this again. It talks about what not to do, mistakes made, stones abandoned, ramps that broke. It even warns against making tunnels too steep. Another scribe chuckles, says something like, don't be clever, be careful. You smile at that. It makes the king feel more human. You stay and watch for a while, your shadow stretching across the stone floor as the sun climbs higher. The pyramid, behind you, looms with its usual perfection. But suddenly, you think of it not just as a triumph, but as an attempt, an experiment, one version in a long chain of others to come. Later, you find yourself walking not to the tool yard, or the granaries, or the temple, but toward a part of the site you've never had a reason to visit before, the sculptor's quarter. It's set back behind the main complex, tucked between a row of acacia trees, and the fence that separates the sacred grounds from the workers' village. You've seen the artists here before, covered in pigment, muttering to themselves, chipping stone into curves and gods and scenes that will be seen for generations. But today you come not with an order. Today you come with a question. You find a middle-aged sculptor barefoot, hair full of red dust, chiseling the curve of a falcon's beak into a slab of dark basalt. His movements are slow, deliberate, like the statue already exists and he's just peeling away what doesn't belong. You wait until he pauses. Then you ask, "Can you teach me to carve?" He looks at you. He doesn't ask why. He just moves over on his stool and pats the space beside him. You sit. He hands you a smaller chisel. And together, you begin. Not a pyramid. Not a wall. Not a god. Just a figure. Human. Simple. Bent forward as if carrying something. It takes the entire afternoon for you to carve its back, arms, legs. The face is too difficult. You leave it blank. That's the part everyone gets wrong. The sculptor mutters. The face. Let it stay unknown. Like us. Obscure cultural tidbit. Many Egyptian statues, especially of lower-class individuals, were intentionally left unfinished in the face. Some believed that without a full face, the Ka, the life force, could not be trapped inside. Others believed it was modesty, or realism, or both. As the sun begins to set, the sculptor sets down his tools and studies your work. He doesn't praise it, but he doesn't correct it either. You've built, he says. Now you're learning to remember. You nod. Then, on impulse, you take the small statue and carry it to the edge of the field, near the little mud brick tomb. The worker's tomb you helped finish. You place the statue in the earth beside it. Not buried. Just resting. Watching. You don't tell anyone. You just walk away. That night, the village is unusually quiet. No fights. No laughter. Just the sound of the wind moving through half-built homes and baskets of drying grain. You lie on your back on the roof again, arms folded behind your head. The stars seem brighter than before. But maybe it's just you. You've seen the inside of chambers. You've placed stones in lines older than memory. You've sung at sunrise and fallen asleep in the shadow of something impossible. And today, you carve something small enough to hold in one hand. Tomorrow, you don't know, but you feel ready to carry whatever it is. And when the wind shifts, blowing from the pyramid, soft and dry, you almost think you hear someone whisper, "You're not finished yet, and neither are we." You wake with the kind of calm that only follows purpose. Not peace exactly. Peace is rare here, but a clarity, a kind of stillness that settles inside you like cooled stone. The world outside your door is already warm, light creeping over rooftops and tracing the curve of baskets filled with dried figs, fish, and the never-ending trail of barley. You don't have a task today. Not officially, but the pyramid still calls. Not loudly, not with trumpets or chants, but with the whisper of something left undone. You gather your things. A flask of water, the flint knife given to you by the joiner, a strip of linen, and a small round bread stuffed with chopped herbs. Then you walk, not to the temple, not to the worker's yard, not to the ramps long since dismantled, but around the western slope of the pyramid, where few go now unless they're guarding it or sweeping sand from the offering court. The west, the land of the dead. Here, the light strikes differently. Shadows stretch longer, and the heat feels older, like it's been waiting longer than the sun itself. The western side houses a new complex under construction, the boat pits. Long trenches dug beside the pyramid, meant to hold massive, ceremonial wooden ships that will never sail. Or rather, they'll sail, but not here. Historical fact of the day. Near the Great Pyramid, boat pits were discovered containing disassembled cedarwood ships, over 140 feet long. These were solar boats, designed to carry the pharaoh's soul across the skies with Ra. The most famous, the Khufu ship, was so precisely constructed that modern engineers marvel at its joinery and seaworthiness, even though it was never meant to touch water again. You approach one of the pits. A group of workers is lowering planks into place, their feet braced against the sand, ropes groaning softly through stone pulleys. You offer to help without speaking. They let you. You tie in, grip a rope, and lean your weight into the effort. The cedar smells sweet and ancient, imported, rare, sacred. Not a tree grown anywhere near here. The scent wraps around you, sawdust and salt, even though the sea is days away. You imagine the wood still remembers water. All day you work on this strange construction. The boat pit is enormous, deeper than you expected. The crew speaks little, and when they do, it's in murmurs. The man directing the joinery is old, and his commands are more gestures than words. You learn to read them like you once read the joiner's nods and silences. You learn that this boat is not for sailing, not for show, and not even for the living. It is for the soul, a vessel of the Ka, a carrier of light, obscure cultural tidbit. Some believe that when a pharaoh died, he journeyed across the sky with Ra in a solar bark by day, and through the underworld on another boat by night, fighting monsters, chaos, and darkness until the sun rose again. The buried ships weren't metaphors. They were provisions. At midday, you eat in the shade of the trench wall. The bread is dry, the herbs sharp. A boy nearby plays a simple reed pipe, slow and unsteady, but earnest. It echoes oddly inside the pit, as if the walls are humming along. Someone passes you a water skin. You drink deeply, then pour a few drops into the trench. For the journey, you say. No one laughs. No one mocks the gesture. They all nod. After lunch, you help polish the curved keel of the boat, smoothing it with flat stones and cloth, massaging the wood-like skin. The grooves of the planks fit seamlessly together, without nails. Just joints, pegs, patience, and memory. You ask the overseer where the cedar came from. Byblos, he says. Mountains near the sea. A gift. You think about that. A tree cut from a foreign hill, floated down a foreign river, dried in a foreign sun, and now buried in Egyptian sand to carry a king across the stars. You think of how far even wood can travel, and what it means to prepare something you'll never use, never see again, but still believe in. As the sun begins to drop, long shadows spill across the pit. The workers begin to pack up. The overseer walks the length of the vessel once more, trailing his fingers across the top like a blessing. Then he places a carved figurine into the hull, a falcon, wings folded, eyes closed. Not labeled, not cataloged, just placed. You ask what it means. He answers, so he's not alone. That night, back in the village, you can't sleep. The pyramid shines under the moon, like it's still unfinished, still rising. You take out your flint and begin carving on a scrap of cedar you pocketed from the pit. Just a small chip. You don't carve a god, or a face, or even a falcon. You carve a boat. Rough, tiny, barely 3 fingers long. You don't know why exactly. Maybe to remember the cedar's scent. Maybe to remember what it felt like to hold what meant for stars. Maybe just because you're not done building yet. You carry the carving to the western field, where the worker's tomb still stands. You place the boat gently at its base. Then, without a word, you walk away. And you realize, the pyramid may be finished. The king may be buried. But we're still building. Still carving. Still sending one another onward. One boat at a time. You rise before first light again. Not because you're summoned. Not because there's a horn or a name on a tablet or a scribe at your door. But because your feet begin moving before your thoughts can catch up. Some part of you wakes now with the stones. An instinct formed over years of lifting, sanding, hauling, witnessing. You've become something strange. Not a laborer, not a priest, not a scribe, but something else. A listener, maybe. Someone who walks the edges of the finished pyramid, not to build it, but to feel it. To read the dust, the angles, the cooling granite, the breaths left behind by those who are already gone. You cross the grounds before the village fully stirs, your sandals brushing through soft sand, past the silent mortuary temple, past the still dark offering court. The east wind is cool today, carrying a hint of Nile moisture, whispering through the ropes of unused scaffolding now coiled and tied like sleeping snakes. You pass 2 guards at the pyramid's northern base. They nod. You nod back. And then you slip down into a place you've never been allowed before. The southern chapel. Small, quiet, tucked against the pyramid's base, mostly hidden beneath an overhang of limestone. Most workers don't even know it's here. Some call it the shadow chamber, or the echo room. Its door is narrow, its walls unmarked. But inside there is silence like you've never heard before. The air feels old, the floor slightly colder than the stone around it. No offerings here, no statues, just a low, empty chamber, and a single slab near the center. A placeholder for something unspoken. You walk around it slowly. Run your fingers along the corners. You expect the familiar groove of chisels, the rhythm of practiced stonework, but this feels different. Softer, less forced, as if it was carved slowly by a single hand in thought. You sit, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, you don't move. You just listen to the pyramid breathing, to the stone warming under the coming sun, to the ghosts of footsteps no longer heard. Historical fact of the day. Many pyramids, particularly those of the Old Kingdom, contain small satellite chapels or dummy chambers near their base. Their exact function is uncertain. Some believe they were symbolic resting places for the Ka of the king. Others say they housed ritual statues or were meant to mirror the interior tomb. Their emptiness is deliberate. You stay there until the light begins to sneak in through the door. Then quietly you rise and leave behind something small, a folded scrap of linen from your tunic. Just a piece. You don't know why, only that the chamber felt like it needed to keep something alive in it. When you return to the surface, the sun is rising fast, and so are the workers. Though the pyramid is complete, its presence still demands. There are guards to train, grounds to maintain, rituals to perform. But now, something new is happening. You see it at the edge of the western field, a line of visitors. Not workers, not priests, not nobles, strangers, people from other nomes, other cities and provinces. They've heard the stories, the songs, the rumors, and now they've come to see. And they don't just look at the pyramid, they look at you, at the sand on your skin, at the way you gesture without thinking, at the scars on your hands. To them, you are as much part of the myth as the stone. You're asked to guide a group of elders from Heliopolis. You've never guided anyone before, but a priest gives you a nod, and so you begin. You show them the eastern face, polished to mirror the morning. You walk them through the offering court, where someone places a date cake and whispers a prayer. You lead them to the causeway and explain how every stone was pulled, washed, aligned, not by magic, but by mud, rope, and stubbornness. And then you take them somewhere no one ever expects. The worker's tomb, the one you helped build, the one no one carved a name on. You bring them there, and they go quiet. And one of them, a thin man with eyes like worn papyrus, asks, "Was he a priest?" You shake your head. "A scribe." You say, "A hauler." There's a pause, and then the man kneels before the tomb and presses his forehead to the mud brick. You don't cry. Not then. But later, after they leave, after you return home, after the sky turns violet and the stars peek through one by one, patient and steady, that's when you let the tears come. Not because of grief, not because of exhaustion, but because something has shifted. The builders are now the story. Obscure cultural tidbit. Ancient Egyptians revered the remembrance of the dead more than the status of the living. A man whose name was spoken for centuries by others was said to live again. Some prayers simply said, "May your name be on the lips of those who walk." Even a worker, if remembered, was believed to walk forever beneath the stars. You fall asleep that night with a strange sense of weightlessness. You are no longer holding up a pyramid. You are now part of what it holds. And as dreams take you, you feel it. Not a voice, not a vision, but a presence. A worker, a block, a falcon boat, a flint tool, a smile carved in shadows, all whispering, "Tell them how we lived. Tell them we were here. Tell them we mattered." The wind carries dust today, not in angry gusts, but in long, slow trails that wrap around your ankles like forgotten fabric. It whispers between stone columns, traces the edges of pathways, and climbs the pyramid's flank in silence. You wait to it, and you know, before your feet touch the ground, that something is ending. Not the pyramid. It stands unshaken, still complete, but the workforce is leaving. They say it without ceremony. No great speeches, no final horn, just small things. Fewer sandals by the well, fewer hands in the water line, fewer voices at dusk. Men begin to pack their tools. Women fold the cloth they once used to wrap offerings. Apprentices return chisels to baskets. The rope coils, the wooden sleds, the grease pots, all lined up, waiting for dust to claim them. You walk the village, watching it loosen. A group of boys sits near the animal pens, weaving stories from stone and shadow. One claims he carried the capstone himself. Another says he saw the pharaoh's soul fly out of the king's chamber like a gold hawk. You don't correct them. Some stories need to grow teeth. By the granary Seba, the old water hauler, who once told you the pyramid was already finished in his dreams, ties his last bundle. He waves you over. "I'm going home," he says, "to a place I can't describe but will recognize when I see it." You smile. He hands you a small clay pot, sealed. You frown. "What is it?" "My pyramid dust," he says, eyes sparkling. "Collected it over 10 years. From my sandals, from the stones, from my beard." You laugh, but when he presses it into your palm, you take it seriously. Obscure cultural tidbit. Some pyramid workers carried home small vials or pouches of sand from the construction site, believing that having even a speck of the king's eternal home nearby would grant them protection, guidance, or a place in the afterlife. These tokens were kept on shelves, buried with the dead, or offered at household shrines. You help Seba onto a donkey cart. His back is straighter than usual. He doesn't look back. You do. You walk through the nearly empty tool yard, past rows of baskets now tipped on their sides, the smell of resin lingering in the air. You spot the small work table where you carved your first faceless figure. The stool is still there, sun-warped, splintered, waiting. Then, beyond the temple wall, you see something unexpected. A small tent you've never noticed. Canvas stained with soot. The entrance tied shut. Curious, you cross the dusty cord and tug gently at the flap. Inside it's cool, shaded, smells like beeswax and old leather. And in the center of the space, a scribe. Not one you recognize. An old man. Hunched, ink-stained fingers, eyelids like heavy linen. He's writing, but not on papyrus. On stone. A small slab of white limestone, chisel in hand, carving lines as delicately as one would trim a child's fingernails. You don't speak at first. He notices you anyway. "Sit," he says. "You're late." You sit. He passes you a second slab, a smaller chisel, and says only, "Write your story." You hesitate. "What story?" He shrugs. "The one you've been carrying." You run your fingers over the slab. Cool, solid, quiet. You begin to carve. Clumsy at first. Crooked lines. Too deep in places. Too shallow in others. But soon, your hand remembers what your heart already knows. You carve the day you first hauled water. You carve the joiner's laugh, and the goat that bit your sleeve, and the boy who sang to donkeys. You carve the night the capstone gleamed, and the moment your hands met the stars. You carve the worker's tomb, the boat of cedar, the lost flint, the priestess who said, "Stone remembers, but people witness." You carve Seba's dream, and then you stop. You look up. The scribe has not spoken again. He simply takes your slab, nods once, and adds it to a small pile beside him. You glance at them, each one marked with names, symbols, lines of quiet memory. Not stories of kings, but of witnesses. Haulers, carvers, water boys, brush girls, grain counters, rope tiers, beer carriers, goose chasers, all carved into stone, all being remembered. Historical fact of the day. In recent decades, archaeologists have discovered inscriptions on blocks at Giza left by labor crews. Names like the Drunkards of Menkaure or the Friends of Khufu appear on inner stone faces. But more rarely, personal records, simple, human notations, are found carved in hidden places, behind casing stones, under platforms. Private messages, never meant for the world, but still waiting. You exit the tent in silence. The sun is lower now. The wind is picked up, scattering sand in swirling arcs. You find yourself walking again, not toward anything, but with everything. And as the village fades behind you, you climb one last time to the edge of the pyramid shadow, to the western side, where the light fades first. There, you find a small figure you once carved, still sitting beside the tomb of the worker with no name. Someone has added a second figure beside it. You don't know who. Maybe the sculptor. Maybe a child. Maybe a stranger who felt the story without hearing it. You sit beside them. Two figures at your side. One story inside your ribs. And as the sun dips below the horizon, you whisper the words you didn't write in stone. I was here, and I remember, and I will not forget. The day begins with wind, not the soft kind that slips through the reeds and hums along roof beams, but a true desert wind, one that stirs the ground until it forgets where it ends. It howls down from the cliffs, drives the sand in long, curling waves across the old ramp paths and into the temple doors. You taste it in your teeth before you step outside. The pyramid looms, as always, but now the wind has stripped away even its silence. You squint into the gusts and wrap your scarf tighter around your head. The village is already in motion, but not with urgency, with closure. Bundles are being tied, doors unlatched and propped open. Families gather at crossroads where no roads remain. You hear the words again. It's time. Time to go. Time to leave what you built. Time to walk away from something taller than your dreams and older than your grief. But you don't feel sadness. Not entirely. You feel filled. Still, you delay your packing. Instead, you wander. One last loop. One final walk around the ribs of the monument that gave you your years. Past the temple yard, now quiet. Past the priest's basin, half full of sand instead of water. Past the brick-lined kitchens where, once, a girl offered you a burnt-date cake and called you Pyramid Boy. You climb the gentle rise of the West Ridge, where the view opens fully. The limestone face glowing under a cloudless dome, the causeway now dusted in gold, and beyond, the long ribbon of the Nile, coiling like the ancient snake that winds through all stories. You sit on a rock, the same rock you once used to rest after a day of hauling sledges in the heat. The mark of your body still fits. The shape is still yours. You breathe. And remember, historical fact of the day. The workforce that built the pyramids didn't live in slavery. Archaeological findings, including workers' tombs, healing facilities, and food storage, suggest a community of well-fed, state-supported laborers who rotated in and out over seasons. Some returned home after years of service with honor, sometimes even land. Their contributions were remembered in official ledgers and oral tradition. As the wind begins to ease, you hear someone approaching. Footsteps. You turn and see a familiar silhouette. The joiner. Hair now streaked with silver. Wrinkles at the corners of her mouth. But the eyes still sharp, still watching. She sits beside you without a word. You offer her the last of your dried figs. She declines, but smiles. Together, you watch the shadows creep up the sides of the pyramid as the afternoon passes. Time folds inward. Neither of you speaks for a while. Then softly she says, "I carved something for you." You glance at her. You did. She nods and reaches into the folds of her robe. From it, she produces a small wooden token. It fits in her palm. She hands it to you. You turn it over. It's a carving of a figure, not unlike the one you made by the workers' tomb. But this one is walking, shoulders forward, one arm carrying a block, the other holding a reed pen. You chuckle. It's me. She nods. Not just you. All of us. But you held the pen. Obscure cultural tidbit. An ancient Egyptian tradition. To be both a laborer and a scribe was exceedingly rare. Manual labor was often separated from intellectual service. But those who could do and remember, build and record, were often chosen for priestly duties or teaching the next generation. To walk with a chisel in one hand and a pen in the other was to walk between worlds. You thank her, and mean it more deeply than you can say. "I thought I'd return home," she says quietly, "back to the marsh village." "Will you?" She shrugs. "The Nile's low this season, and I've grown used to rock under my feet." You both sit for a while longer. Then she rises and dusts off a robe. "You'll know when it's time to go," she says. Then, like a reed in the wind, she disappears into the shadows. You stay, not to hold on, but to complete something invisible. You look again at the wooden token. Then slowly, you carve your initials into its base. Not the royal script, not priestly signs, Just the simple, slanted marks you first scratched into wet sand as a child. You place it in your pouch, then walk the ridge one more time. At the edge of the slope, you see a boy watching you. Barefoot, new, wide-eyed. He stares at the pyramid like it might start breathing. You kneel beside him. What do you see? You ask. He blinks. It's too big. You smile. It always is. He looks up. Did you build it? You think about that. About the water you hauled, the joints you sanded, the tomb you helped build for a man whose name never reached a scroll. About the statue, the falcon boat, the slab of words carved in silence. You nod. A little part of it. Will I build one too? He asks. You glance at the horizon, and in your heart, you hear it. Yes, but aloud you just smile. Only if you want to. He runs off then, feet kicking up little puffs of sand, arms outstretched like wings. You stand alone on the ridge, and behind you, the pyramid watches. Not coldly, not proudly, just patiently, as if it knows this isn't the end, as if it knows the builders never really leave. They just walk a little farther into the dust, and keep shaping the world. By now, the wind has died. The kind of quiet that follows a long conversation has settled over the pyramid grounds. The hush after centuries are spoken aloud. The sun slips into a warmer hue, not because the air changes, but because you do. You begin to notice the soft orange bathing every stone, how the pyramid doesn't cast just one shadow, but thousands, tiny ones, inside the chisel marks, between the joints, under the smallest cracks. You walk along the eastern base, where the limestone still gleams if the light hits, just right. You run your fingers along the seam between two stones, perfectly fitted. No mortar, no glue, just precision and pressure and time. Then you stop and listen, because something's different. You hear chanting, not loud, not formal, not the bellow of state priests, but something looser, warmer, from the direction of the workers' quarter, near the mud brick tomb. You follow the sound. As you walk, you pass things left behind. An empty jug with a beast circling its rim, a rope fraying in the sun, a sandal missing its twin. The remains of lives paused, not discarded. At the tomb, you find a circle. No leaders, no crowd, just a handful of men and women, some you worked with, some you never knew, sitting or kneeling or standing around the small, uneven grave. Someone is playing a soft rhythm on a pod drum. Another hums. A third speaks. No prayers, no verses, just stories. One by one, each person steps forward and says a name, a moment, a memory, not of kings, but of neighbors, friends. The man who cracked every joke about donkeys, the girl who braided reeds so tightly they could tow granite, the boy who could carry 2 water skins and still smile. You listen, and finally, you step forward too. You say the joiner's name. The way she looked at unfinished would like it owed her a secret. The way she said, "Don't smooth it too much. Let it remember it was once a tree." They nod. No one applauds. No one cries. But the moment sits. Still, historical fact of the day. Egyptians believed the soul lived on through memory, especially when the name of the dead was spoken aloud, not only by priests or in temples, but by anyone. They even had a specific term for it. Run, the name spirit. To say someone's name was to keep them from fading. And when all who knew your name were gone, only then did you truly vanish. Later that evening, you walk alone through the southern trench. The shadows here fall faster. You pass old scaffolding now half buried, ramps no longer used. One even has a piece of papyrus nailed to it, curling with age. You lean in. It's a joke. A crude drawing of 2 workers pulling a block while a third naps beneath it, labeled supervisor. You chuckle. Some things don't change. You keep walking, and you begin to notice the marks. Little ones, hidden in plain sight. Not state carvings, not royal decrees. Just names, symbols, initials scratched into the backs of blocks. Tiny etchings in corners where no one was meant to look. A bird, a reed, a simple handprint pressed into soft plaster before it dried. Obscure cultural tidbit. Archaeologists have discovered informal graffiti inside and around pyramids, inscriptions left by the workers themselves. Crews named their teams with humor, the vigorous gang, the drunkards of Khufu, and sometimes left small notes, even doodles, hidden behind casing stones. These human touches remain one of the few ways the anonymous builders speak to us. You pause at one particular symbol, a circle with a line through it. You've seen it before, scratched into a block you helped move years ago. At the time, you thought it was a guide mark, but now you realize it's a signature. You smile, and, without planning to, you kneel beside the stone and add your own. A spiral. Simple. Quiet. Yours. You rise, dust your hands, and begin the long loop around the pyramid's base. One final orbit. As you walk, you speak softly. To the stone. To the silence. To yourself. You speak the names of those who never had their names written down. Not in scrolls. Not on tomb walls. Not even in ledgers. But you remember them. You walk past the Falcon boat trench, now filled, sealed. The sand pressed flat above it like a lid on memory. You place a stone there. Just a pebble. Then you keep walking. Past the scribe's tent, now empty. Past the sculptor's courtyard, where a final statue waits with unfinished eyes. Past the courtyard where once you poured water, barely tall enough to see the top of the pot. You've walked every part of this place. You've moved across it like wind. And now you know. It is part of you. Not because you built it, but because it built you. And when you finally reach the corner where the pyramid turns and the wind rises just enough to lift your tunic and dry the sweat at your neck, you stop and you say it. Not aloud, not with fanfare, just with breath. I was here. And the stone? The stone listens. There are no horns this morning. No chants. No footsteps shaking the dust from the causeway. Just the hush of the desert holding its breath. You stand at the far edge of the site, where the village path meets the long, unwinding trail eastward, back toward the Nile, back toward the world that forgot your name years ago, before you ever touched a block of limestone. Behind you, a pyramid, silent, unmoving, but not empty, full of effort, full of breath, full of the memory of calloused hands and warm meals and tired laughter after dark. The path ahead is simple, worn, lined with scattered stones, and utterly unknown. You take a final look over your shoulder. The pyramid's face catches the dawn just as it always does, like it's pretending to wake with you, like it didn't glow quietly through the night. The sky behind it blooms in layers, rose, gold, lavender, the kind of sky only old gods remember. You take a step, and another. You walk, not quickly. You have no need to rush. The world is still here, and now so are you. You're not leaving something behind. You're bringing it with you. The smell of hot dust, the slap of wet rope on stone, the song someone once sang to summon water, the warm weight of a chisel passed from one cracked palm to another, the face of a man who laughed so hard he choked on barley beer. You carry them all. No shrine required, no monument, just you and the road, and the wind pressing lightly against your back. Historical fact of the day. After great state projects were completed, like pyramids, temples, or major canals, many Egyptian workers were not discarded but repurposed. Some were given land. Some went on to other sites. A few even became teachers, passing on techniques, songs, and trade secrets to younger generations. A society that respected memory knew that experience was not wasted. It was replanted. Hours pass. The village grows smaller in the blur of heat haze behind you. A caravan overtakes you on the trail. 3 donkeys, a loud merchant, and a child playing with a clay giraffe. They nod. You nod. No one speaks. But later, as the caravan camps for a meal under a fig tree, the merchant calls you over. You sit. Accept dates and bread. The child offers you the giraffe. You hand them the small falcon token the joiner once gave you. They blink, then hold it to their chest like it matters. You don't tell them it does. As the sun leans into afternoon, you reach a fork in the path. One direction winds back toward the floodplains, toward cities, toward shrines, toward officials who will want to know where you've been and why your hands are tougher than most scribes. The other path leads uphill, Not a mountain, just a rise. A sandstone bluff dotted with scrub trees and white rocks. A place no one goes unless they're done being someone else's something. You climb. Slowly. The wind follows you now, not ahead, not behind, just beside. Like it too. Has seen enough of square blocks and perfect lines. At the top of the bluff, you find a ledge. Crumbling. Unimportant. Forgotten by maps. Perfect. You sit. You take off your sandals. You stretch your legs and feel the stone beneath you. Different from the pyramid, but not separate. And then, you do nothing. You simply exist. The air hums with the weight of silence, not as emptiness, but as completion. And as you rest, you realize you never needed your name carved in stone, because you carved your name into the world. Obscure cultural tidbit. In Egyptian belief, the afterlife was not some far-off sky realm, but a continuation of life, with fields, labor, rest, and memory. They called it the Field of Reeds, and imagined it looking not unlike home, just better. It was not wealth or fame that gained you entry, but a heart light with truth, a balance, a memory passed on. You lie back. Let the sky press gently against your eyelids. Let the pyramid shrink behind your thoughts. Let the years settle, not as weight, but as root. And finally, you sleep.